Hey, how's it going? I'm Jeremiah Wheelersburg with Craftsman Home Inspections here in Colorado. I'm a certified professional inspector with InterNACHI, and today we're here to inspect this house built in 1980, so let's get to it. Let's talk about getting the inspection started. So I'm observing the neighborhood when I'm rolling up to the house. So I just want to see the site conditions. I want to see if other people's driveways are uneven. I want to see if I see brick damage on the exterior. First thing I do when I get to the house, I bring my tools in, I set up my drop cloth, get my station ready, and then I start outside. So I like to start back further. I like to get a wide angle just to get a feel for the house. So I'm looking wide first, and then I'm moving closer, looking at individual systems and components around the house. So first thing, I set up my ladder. I make sure I put a sign at my ladder saying, "Danger, do not climb my ladder." Just for liability's sake, I make sure I take a picture of that and put that in my report. I also make sure I tie down my ladder. So my ladder is tied to the roof, it's not going anywhere. And then initially, I take a walk around the house. So I take a walk around the house just to get a feel for things even before I start doing my inspection. It's just like my general walk around. I'm gonna take a picture of the front of the house. That's gonna be the first picture in my report. So I like to get a picture of the whole front of the house, driveway, ladder set up, everything. It's gonna go right there in the report. And then I'm gonna go around the house and I'm gonna start taking exterior views of the house. So I'm gonna get a picture of the front entry. That's gonna go in my report. I'm gonna get a picture of the left side of the house. So when I go around the left side of the house, that's gonna be a section that has left side of the house, right side of the house, and I'm gonna get a picture of the grading. So how's our grading look? I'm gonna get a picture of the siding, and those are gonna be my exterior views of the house. I'm gonna start looking at the driveway because that's the first thing that we're coming to. So again, walkways and then driveway. I'm gonna notice that we've got a trip hazard right here. So what's gonna happen for me, I'm gonna have a nice picture with my boot against it, and I'm gonna get a good perspective showing that it's a trip hazard for my boot. All right, driveway. I'm seeing that our driveway is uneven. We've got trip hazards. We do have sealant in these extra large cracks here. So I'm gonna suggest that they have repairs made by a professional contractor. Again, they've got options. My job is not to give them all the options, but to just say, you have repairs made by a professional contractor. If they do have questions, I'm gonna say, hey, you can have this whole thing repaired and replaced, or there are systems to jack the driveway up to get things level again. Now we're moving towards the house. I'm looking at trip hazard here where the driveway has settled, creating a trip hazard here at the slab leading into the garage. So we're gonna mention things like that in our report. On my walk around, my thorough walk around the house, my system is to start at the entryway door and then move around the house. So I'm gonna start at the entry. I'm gonna look here. We've got some spalling here, the concrete, where the surface of the concrete has flaked away, leaving exposed aggregate. So sometimes it has to do with the quality of the concrete, maybe too much moisture in the concrete, things like that. I'm just gonna mention that as a cosmetic defect. The same thing here, spalling. Sometimes it has to do with throwing ice remover or salt on the concrete, things like that. So I'm gonna mention that in my report. They can choose to have cosmetic defects fixed if they want, but it's cosmetic. I'm gonna check the guardrail here. I'm gonna ring the doorbell. All right, we've got our dryer vent here. I'm just gonna make sure it's not clogged. If it's clogged, I'm gonna take a picture and show that we've got some blockage there, but we're free there. Again, we've got more than 4 risers here on the steps leading to the house. They are wide steps, but I'm gonna suggest that more than 4 risers, they have a handrail on the staircase going to the house. Notable observations that are gonna go in my report: the type of siding, type of exterior. So we've got brick and we've got vinyl. I'll put a note in there just as a courtesy to my client saying, even though vinyl siding is advertised as maintenance free, you do need to maintain seams around windows and other areas, just at the seams every 3 to 5 years. Need to be recaulked just to keep that moisture out of the house. So brick exterior, I'm gonna look at it. On a lot of these older homes, I've noticed in my area, I don't see weep holes. So a lot of times I want to see a weep hole where it allows drainage from behind the wall, if it's there, to weep out of the wall. I don't see weep holes here. So for me, I'm just going to look at the house when I'm inside, around the house, see if I see any related damage to not having those in place. If I don't see any damage, I'll mention that I don't see them, but I'm also not seeing any damage that relates to that issue. So again, ledge here, I'm just making sure that we're sealed. Sometimes you can get moisture entry around these areas, so I'm just making sure things look good. I'm looking at the grout lines. A lot of times you'll see grout failing here. We just want to have those repaired. Things look good here though. Vinyl siding. Again, you're only inspecting based on your experience. I have some experience with vinyl siding, selling it. I'm just looking at basically for my own opinion and evaluation, the grade of the siding. I don't feel any insulation behind the siding, which is fine. Some manufacturers sell a vinyl siding that actually has insulation that follows the ridges of the vinyl, and that just makes it be able to withstand impact from hail a little bit better and also increase the insulation value. So I don't see it, not a big deal, but most of the time in an old neighborhood, vinyl is placed on top of the existing exterior cladding, which is probably a composite siding. So here we're actually adding some minor R value just by adding one system on top of the other. I'm trying to get a wide view and then a close-up view. So sometimes I realize, oh, I'm too close, I need to step back. That way I just kind of get a wider frame of the house. So I'm looking at everything. So I'm going to go up on the roof and walk what we can walk, but there's snow up there, so that's going to go on my report that previous days leading up to the inspection, we did have snow, the ground is wet, the roof is wet, so that's going to limit my ability to walk that entire roof, but we're going to inspect what we can. I'm just looking at the windows. I'm looking for fogged windows, seal failure, fading, and any obvious damage, things like that. All right, walking the exterior. Obviously, I'm going to get a glimpse of the foundation the best that I can. So this house, I'm going to get a good view of it here. So I'm going to look high to low. So I'm looking up, I'm looking down, I'm looking at chimney structure, I'm looking at gutters, soffits, fascia, garage roof. I'm looking at the gutters leading down. I want to see those gutter downspouts extending away from the house like they are. So I'm looking at least 8 feet away from the house with these downspout extensions. Houses are being built closer and closer together, so sometimes that's really hard to do. This looks really good, so my suggestion is 6 to 8 feet away from the house. I love inspecting on a day like this where we've had precipitation. So we've got snow melt, so it's a great time to find leaks. I can actually see where the water is draining away from the house. Also, I'm observing the gutters from below. So the gutter up here, the paint's peeling, I can see some corrosion, some rust. So that's probably a leaky gutter, but the fact that we have rain dripping down the gutter system right now, and I don't see an active leak, you know, it's a good sign, but I'm gonna tell my client there definitely has been some leakage there. You wanna have that maintained so they can have that sealed up or replaced. Gates, fences are not part of my responsibility as far as the standards of practice, but as a courtesy to my client, I push on posts when I walk by them. If they fail, they'll be leaning or they'll be really, really loose. Again, I'm going to close the gate. If the latch doesn't operate, I'll mention that the latch doesn't operate and they should have the hardware replaced. So here, we get into the backyard. On my photos about the photo exterior, you know, I put an exterior views section. This is my left side of the house. So first thing, I'm looking at the grade. So I'm looking at the ground. How does the ground slope around the house? So right here, we do have positive drainage. So the ground is sloping away from the home. I'm getting a view of the foundation. Of course, I'm looking for obvious foundation issues like large cracks, signs of water penetration. I just see some cosmetic defects where I can see the aggregate. I'll just point out to my client if they're with me that it's cosmetic. I do see a little hairline crack. So, you know, if I do see a hairline crack, I'm gonna point that out to my client in the report and just say, you know, these are common cracks. Usually has to do with initial settling of the foundation. I'm only pointing it out because I see it, but I'm not making a big deal out of a hairline crack. But who knows? In my experience, you see one thing, it leads to another, and all of a sudden, what wasn't a big deal maybe becomes a big deal as you're moving around the house and you're seeing other things related to that. So again, we're seeing our fireplace, brick fireplace. Our fireplace foundation looks good. I'm looking at downspouts here. I'm also looking, again, when I'm looking at grading, I'm noticing that they've built this retaining wall, which is used, looks like, as a flower bed. So that's not suggested. So you can see, if we had a positive grade, now when you're building a retaining wall around the house, or a flower bed around the house, if you're building a retaining wall or a flower bed around the house, now we've actually taken a positive grade and we've turned it into a neutral or negative grade. So now within that flower bed, all of a sudden we're allowing water to saturate that area, melt off, or just settle right next to the foundation. So I suggest removing retaining walls or flower beds that are sitting next to the foundation. If somebody really doesn't want to do that, that's up to them. My next suggestion is, hey, let's do potted flowers in there instead of planting and watering the soil right next to our foundation. Another thing over here, I'm looking at this downspout. The downspout discharges underground. Anytime we have a subterranean or underground downspout, I'm going to point that out in my report. I keep my narratives mostly in my software. I have some in a note section on my report. I've got one about in-ground downspouts and how they're not suggested for me, only because I can't observe the discharge point. So I tell them, if you're going to use it like that, you need to find the discharge point, either by having a professional find it or getting water down into that drain and observing it. You want all of those discharge points observable. I can't see that one, so I'm going to mention that to my client. Here, looks like the gutter system was upgraded. So we went from a smaller diameter to a larger diameter downspout. And instead of having this one go into the ground, they actually extended it out to discharge that drainage from the roof away from the house. So that's great. With the framed roof, I'm going to mention to my client that they've got a framed roof. They've got nice eaves. So not only am I pointing out defects that I find, I like to point out the positive. That way, they're actually hearing positive feedback about the house that they're excited to buy. So this looks really nice. We've got metal hangers on the joist holding the roof up. Looks like we're not only fastened well where the roof connects to the house, but we're probably overly fastened, which is great. I like that. So again, here we've got our posts. I'm going to take a owl and I'm going to poke around a little bit. I already feel good about this. I don't think I'm going to find any rot already because of how much overhang we have on these eaves. Also, we've got a gutter to catch the water coming off on this side. But I am going to poke around and I'm just going to see if we have any rot. Again, we're anchored really nicely into the concrete. I also want to be careful. I'm not trying to do cosmetic damage. So a lot of times I'll try to poke around somewhere where it's not very visible. But a lot of times you'll go right through a post and I'll take a picture of that screwdriver right through the post and mention that they need to have that post replaced because it is a structural component. And then I'm just going to look at the roof. So with this particular roof, cool feature, we've got a skylight on the patio. So we're letting some natural light into the patio area. If this was inside, I'd be even a little more concerned about it because there's so much you can't see when you've got your drywall covering the underside of that until you've got a major leak. Here or outside, I don't see any signs of damage, paint, or leakage. So our posts look good. All of our metal hangers are looking good. We've got hangers on the other side of these joists connecting there. Okay, on the inside of the house, we're going to notice a little bit of cracking in this corner. We do see some cracking and settling of the patio here. They've been sealed. Our observation, even from the inside looking out, is the grading. So now we've got a positive grade, but right here in this corner where we're having this problem is neutral grade, flat grade, where rain, snow can sit here and melt against the foundation. That retaining wall to me does not look 40 years old, so they've probably done some work to increase the grade beyond this retaining wall to get that grade positive on that section of the back of the house. That way, rainwater, snow melt is actually moving away from the house. We want to get that grade positive, first 6 feet out. We want a 1/4 inch per foot grade for the first 6 feet. Now we're getting to the electrical panel. So we're going to look at our electrical service. We've got a lateral coming up from the ground. So our electrical service is coming up into here, going into the panel. So we're going to look at that. If you're a lot of houses in Colorado downtown, we're looking at an overhead service that's coming down into the meter. So first thing I'm going to do when I get to electrical panel is I'm going to look at my ground conditions. Is it wet? If the ground is wet, if there's snow on the ground, then I'm not going to open up that panel and look at it. I'm going to mention that in my report, that you should have this panel opened up, thoroughly inspected by a professional electrical contractor, because I don't want to get electrocuted because the ground's wet. So again, wear insulated boots with rubber soles. I've got my electrical inspection tools right here. We're going to wear gloves. I bring magnets. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to touch the panel with the back of my hand. I'm going to make sure that there's no power on this. Another thing that I like to do is take out my voltage detector, and I'm just seeing if there's voltage on the panel. I like to go home at the end of the night. My wife wants to see me at the end of the day. So we detected no voltage there. We're going to do the same thing on the dead front cover. We're just going to make sure that our voltage meter is not picking up any power on that. I'm going to get my gloves on. So gloves, rubberized soles on our shoes. Okay, first thing I'm going to start with the meter. So I'm following the service from the city and then kind of going into the house. So we're coming up here. I'm making sure that we're connected, nothing's loose here, because your main service conductors are coming in here. So a lot of times I'll see a service pipe disconnected here. And so we're looking there, we're checking our meter tag, making sure the meter tag is not disconnected. If it's disconnected, then suggestion is to have the service company come out and put a new tag on there. I'm just gonna grab the meter, make sure that the box is not loose, make sure that our meter's not loose. All right, service panel. We're a GE panel. I'll take a picture of the manufacturer, General Electric. I like that, it's a good brand. We've got a split bus here, so we don't have one main disconnect. So I'm gonna mention to my client the type of service that they have. If there was a main disconnect, I'm gonna mention the amperage that's on there, and I'm gonna point out exactly which breaker is their main disconnect. So in this case, we've got a split panel, which means in order to get all the power off to the house, you've got some individual breakers up here, like this one's for the AC, one of these is probably for the range, and then another one is gonna give power to the branch circuitry below. So in that case, I'm just explaining to my client in the report, here's a summary of what a split system is, so that you know you don't have a main breaker, you have to shut off multiple breakers in an emergency in order to get all the power off to your house. So they're gonna throw all these breakers. I'll put a picture in the report that shows that all of these breakers need to be thrown to get all the power off to the house. So main section is labeled here with this 50 amp breaker. Again, I'm not gonna get much information from this. So one of the things I'm gonna have to mention in my report is we're missing labels. Typically above here, you would have a manufacturer label that's mentioning information about grounding, information about amperage, total amperage, the type of panel that we have, and I don't have all of that. So I'm not going to report on any of those things. I'm going to actually mention that we're missing the label, therefore I can't confirm information that's needed. So again, I open the panel, I'm going to look at it. I want to make sure that I've got a panel screw holding this dead front cover in place. If that's missing, I'm going to mention to have one of those put in place by a professional electrical contractor. The condition of the dead front, I just want to make sure it's stable. You know, it's not going to fall out when you open this panel, causing a shock issue. I'm looking at where the breakers are. So all of my breakers are in the on position. So if the breakers, any breaker is tripped, I'm going to take a picture of that so that I can note, hey, this breaker was tripped when the inspector arrived on the scene. It was left in that position. You should find out why, or have an electrical contractor come and figure out why that breaker was tripped. So they're all on. I know to leave it in that condition. My suggestion is going to be to have all of these breakers labeled individually so that the homeowner knows if there's a dangerous condition or an emergency, they know exactly which breaker to shut off. So we're missing information here, we're missing manufacturer information, so branch circuitry needs to be updated by a professional. And all of these type of issues, this is a safety concern. I suggest before closing that they have these things taken care of. You are not required to remove the dead front cover. If you choose to do so, make sure that you're properly trained. All I'm doing is checking to make sure there's not voltage at this screw. I have had that thing try to shock me. Again, the more tools that are on my person, the less I have to make my way back to my home base. I'm gonna put a little bit of pressure on this panel with the back of my hand, only because when I open the panel, I don't want the cover falling off. I'm gonna hold the panel like this while I get it off. That way, if there's a spark or something, I've got some kind of cover in front of me. That's why I like those handle magnets. I'm gonna look at its general condition. So, is it clean? Are there cobwebs everywhere? Is it extremely corroded? I'm also looking at knockouts. Used, that they're either covered and sealed, that way we're not allowing pests and excess dust and debris into the service panel. So again, I'm going to follow the service coming into the panel. So we've got 2-aught aluminum service entrance conductors. So typically those are carrying 150 amps to the panel. We've got our upper cluster here and our split bus system are carrying power to major appliances, and then here our branch circuitry is coming from this 50 amp panel. So again, what I want to report on for my client is if they're marked, which these ones are, we've got 2-aught main conductors coming into the panel. I can't confirm the panel amperage for the house because we're missing the manufacturer label, but I'm going to try to see what I can see as far as what type of wiring we have. So we have copper wiring, so that's good. Where I'm inspecting, just a few blocks down the road, I see a lot of aluminum wiring. So we've got copper, so we're happy with that. I just want to make sure under each one of these lugs here that we are only having one conductor, so one wire under each lug. So here we've got our ground wires, we've got our neutral wires here, our white wires. We're bonded to the panel, and then I'm looking just to make sure that our connections look good. We don't see corrosion, we don't see any damage to the breakers, and then the wiring sleeve on that wire is not cut back too far. Really common issues that I see, which I don't see here, are multiple neutrals in one lug, things like that. Double tapped breakers, we don't want to see that. Here, we are getting kind of a little bit older on this wiring. On the sleeve, I am seeing some of these wires damaged here. So I'm actually seeing that we need to have some panel maintenance performed here just due to the age of these wires. So they're getting old, brittle. Maybe some of these breakers have been replaced over the last 40 years, and we're starting to see a little bit of damage there, which is a shock hazard for somebody working in the panel. So just a little bit of maintenance there. Could mention the dust. Just suggest typical panel maintenance, which is just making sure the panel is cleaned. Electrician's going to make sure everything's tight, and he doesn't see any issues there. So also looking for scorching, overheating, signs of overheating, things like that. I don't see any signs like that. Also in your main panel, you want to make sure that your tied together. Your neutrals and your grounds are bonded together. So we're seeing that going on here, which is good. If it were a sub panel, then those systems would be separated. And this house does not have a sub panel. So again, we've got a good system here. It's an older system, but it looks like it's in decent shape. A little bit of panel maintenance and wiring maintenance on some of these conductors on the left side. But other than that, we look like we're in pretty good shape. Two of the most dangerous parts of your inspection are going to be at your panel and on the roof. So those are the areas that I like to create rules for. So if there's a dangerous condition, if the ground's wet, I confidently mention my limitations to my client and say, hey, I can't inspect that today. It's just too dangerous. And if you confidently state your limitations, they'll understand. And I usually don't have a problem. We just completed our electrical panel inspection. Now we're gonna look at our hose bibs or our exterior faucets. So I'm gonna run it first, just make sure I'm getting water. I'm gonna get my water pressure meter out. Sometimes you get it tight and it's completely at the wrong angle. See where we're at as far as pressure. Right here, we're right at about 75. So we want to see it somewhere between 40 and 90. So we're good there. First home inspection I ever did, my first inspector mentor left the pressure on and asked me to take the pressure meter off, and it sprayed me in the face, and he got a good laugh at it. So I have not initiated anybody like that, but it was a pretty good prank. Okay, so looking at the foundation, high to low, coming across a window well. I'm going to suggest, even though it's a pretty shallow window well, I'm going to suggest that they have a window well cover put on there, just for danger, safety. I don't want a kid falling in there. Also, you don't want to trap unwanted pests in the window well. So covers on every window well is what I'm going to suggest. Downspouts, I'm looking at the foundation. I'm going to mention an area of neutral grade at the left rear corner of the foundation, because we've got positive drainage and then that water is actually coming back this direction. So at some point we may have had a disconnected downspout that was washing the soil away and causing that water to come back towards this corner. All right, on this side of the house, we do have a window well cover. It's called a wagon. No, I'm just kidding. But so again, just having a cover put on the window well. Again, in window wells, especially very large window wells, you can get in houses like newer houses, you can get a bigger picture of the foundation down there. If that siding is close and you can't really get a good snapshot, you can see some of the foundation down there. So I like to look in window wells when I can. Their air conditioning system has been winterized. They're not using it anymore for the season. We're getting cooler. Makes sense. Again, with your client, state confidently your limitations. So once the temperatures drop below 65, we're no longer going to turn on the air conditioning system. So again, when I was newer in the industry, I was a little more timid with those things. I just confidently say, hey, for just protecting your system, we don't want to damage anything. If it's below 65, we're not going to inspect your air conditioning compressor. So, but here we do have the compressor. We're just kind of going to see what we can see. I'm just looking to make sure there's no vegetation on the cabinet. I'm also going to look up into the vanes here, and I just want to see if they're dirty. So these ones are a little bit dirty. That just means you're getting dust and debris in here. So I'm just going to suggest regular cleaning. That way, this compressor is dissipating heat the way it should. We're looking at the condition here. We want to make sure that we've got a shutoff near the compressor, within eyesight of it. If the service panel were next to it, we could have the main shutoff there, but we need a main shutoff breaker in line of sight of the compressor. So we're good there. We've got power to our radon system. So this is our radon fan. I can hear it. I can feel that it's working, the vibration. So that just gives me peace of mind to know that that fan's working, and we knew it was because we could see that fluid level in the basement. So we're looking at the suction line here. We want to make sure that it is insulated, and it is. So we've got insulation. A lot of times you'll see that insulation coming off. We just don't want, without insulation, it's going to freeze up, and then as it melts, a lot of times it'll melt back down into the house, and into your furnace cabinet, and that's where we'll see corrosion in the cabinet. So we're good, we're insulated. A lot of times you'll get pests and mice getting in through the opening where your coils or your compressor lines are going into the house for your AC. So I just like to check, make sure we've got foam or sealant in there to keep pests out of the house. And now we're just going to look for the manufacturer label. That way we can let our client know the age. We found our label for the compressor unit. We're going to take a picture of the label. I put a picture of the label with the serial number for all the major appliances in the report. I take a picture, wide label, and then I get a close-up one. I go on the Building Intelligence Center website and I look up the serial number and I'll get the age of that compressor for my client. Again, I'm looking at the house as a whole system, starting high to low, roof to foundation. We've got our gable vents for the attic. We also, I saw in the attic, we've got a turbine ventilator, which needs a little bit of wind to get that to pull air out of the roof of the house. Window wells need a cover. We've got a positive grade on the side of the house. We're looking at the irrigation system. So we've got our backflow preventer here. So again, I don't inspect irrigation systems, but I will mention to my client my observations if I see anything that really stands out. So if I see leaking valves, obvious corrosion, then I'm going to point those things out. I'm just not going to run the sprinkler system. We're going to run the exterior faucet. I'm just going to check the pressure. So again, we've got 75 PSI, right around there, maybe at 80. So right around 75 to 80, 40 to 90 is good. So we're good here. I put my hand over there so I don't get sprayed in the face. I take a picture, exterior, rear faucet and front faucet. Downspouts, I can see the water going away from the house. Here, the concern I'm going to mention to my client is, again, flower bed against the house. You can see a nice positive grade away from the house here, but then we've got flat neutral grade here. So here, we're collecting snow and rain and we're just letting it settle right into the foundation. So, you know, if that soil supporting the foundation gets excessively saturated, we could have some washout. We might have some foundation issues at that point. Right now, I don't see anything here and I've got a good view of the foundation. So that always makes me feel good for my client. If I've got something like that, but I can also see the foundation. Also, something I love about a brick exterior is when you have issues, you see them. They stick out because you'll get cracking, step cracking, corner cracks around windows, and I don't see anything like that in the exterior. We've got a little bit of undermining underneath the patio. So you can see there where it looks like it's kind of washed out, that I'm gonna suggest that they have that filled or sealed to keep pests from entering there or to keep that from washing out further. Because that undermining, we don't want to see that patio settled differentially to where it starts to crack. One more reason I always suggest a sewer scope is you've got a big, beautiful tree in an older home. That means big, beautiful roots. So again, the sewer line's coming out somewhere on this side of the house. We want to make sure they have a sewer scope so that they know that they're not having any damage to that sewer line caused by things like tree roots. Let's start our roof inspection. So first thing, ladder. So I carry 3 ladders. I carry a 6-foot step ladder, get into some attics, crawl spaces with that if I need it. I also carry a 22-foot ladder on top of my vehicle. And then I also carry this 15-foot extend climb ladder. This is my favorite ladder. Most days, this is the only ladder I need to complete an inspection. So, got the ladder set up. I like my ladder set when my feet are at the base, it's just out of reach, or I'm just barely able to touch the ladder rungs. I always put a sign on my ladder, either a sign like this, or I've got InterNACHI's yellow inspector at work sign. So some ladder that just says, decreases your liability, says do not climb this ladder, danger, stop, and I always have a picture of that in my report. Make sure all the rungs are locked. I'm gonna climb the ladder. Before I step onto the roof, I already have it strapped down. I make sure that my ladder is tied to the gutters or the soffits, the fascia, whatever is the best place for me to get on is a place where I can tie my ladder down. Again, I want at least 2 feet ladder extended above the roof line so that when I step around my ladder, I've got something to grab onto to stabilize myself. All right, so once we're at the roof line, I stop here and I begin my roof inspection. So a couple places I don't want my client following me is one, the roof, also crawl spaces, attics, things like that. Also, limitations. There's snow on the roof. It's melting really well. We can see it melting. I feel safe getting on this portion of the roof only because there's plenty of access and I can see dry shingles. If I don't see dry shingles, I'm not getting on that roof, and I'm noting my limitation. It's unsafe conditions. So here, I don't see any frost. I don't see any ice buildup where I can step off. I'm good to go. There's only a little bit of snow right here at the edge. So I'm gonna begin my reporting from the edge of the roof. Always make sure you have 3 points of contact, so feet and hands, at least one hand. I'm gonna start noting layers. So I'm gonna lift up the shingle a little bit. I can see one layer. I can't see the underlayment, so typically I can see underlayment, so water barrier, and number of shingles. Also from the edge, I'm gonna start my gutter inspection. So I'm gonna start filling that section of the report out. Roof drainage system. We've got gutters and downspouts. Things are looking decent around the house, but on this side, we've got these nice big trees. I'm noticing a lot of debris in here, so the gutters are not flowing freely. So I'm seeing a lot of water sitting in these gutters. So I'm gonna mention that we need to have gutter maintenance. So the downspouts probably need to be cleared to allow proper drainage. I'm gonna take nice pictures showing that the gutters are full of water and leaves. All right, so we made it safely onto the roof. So I talked about having some rules that you need to follow in order to keep yourself safe and make sure you come home at the end of the day. So one of those major and most dangerous places as far as needing to have rules to keep you safe is on the roof. When you're on the roof, you never lean towards an edge. Also, you never walk backwards. So I will never walk backwards on a roof. My wife has actually trained my kids to say, "Daddy, be careful on the roof" when I leave the house. So that's a good thing. I like to hear that, and it keeps me thinking. Again, I also don't get on a roof that's too steep. If the roof is too steep, I'm not going to be on that roof. I'm going to mention that limitation to my client. Also, if it's wet, which this portion of the roof is not wet, I'm not going to walk on it. So what am I looking at? I'm looking at windows, siding, flashing, gutters. So I want to see a drip edge flashing. Ideally, a great suggestion would be to extend this downspout right here to the gutter rather than having it discharge onto the roof, because this is just going to wear out your shingles a little bit faster. It's going to wash those granules away just a little bit. I'm looking at apron flashing here, right where the house connects to the roof. We're looking at windows, overall condition, things look good. We're looking at step flashing, where your side of the house meets the roof. There should be flashing underneath those shingles. I can't see it. Sometimes it's not visible. I'll mention that underneath the shingles, but I can actually see it coming out right here at the edge. So I can confirm that it exists. All right, we've got limitations here. So I don't have a clear path to get on top of this roof. There's just too much snow. I'm gonna mention that to my client, but again, you're doing a good inspection. I'm going to mention what I can. So I can see gutters, I can see drip edge flashing, I can see step flashing along the edge of this roof. Those are the type of things I'm going to inspect what I can. I don't get on the roof and just say I couldn't inspect anything. I'm going to do my best to deliver a great home inspection, even with limitations, to my client. I can see a gutter leaf system on that side of the roof, which is great because they've got a lot of tall trees over there. Gutters are full of leaves. There's some standing water in the gutters. And then I'm going to report on the existence and the condition of visible flashing. I'm going to report on the condition of windows, and then I'm going to mention the type of shingles that we've got. So we've got architectural laminated shingles. I'm looking just basic installation. I'm looking for exposed fasteners, so nails on the roof. And if I see that, I'm going to mention that we have those sealed, covered up, or a new shingle placed on top of that, so we don't have exposed fasteners causing leakage. So from what I can see, we've got good granules on the roof. We've got what appears to be a new roof. So that makes me feel good about my client's investment. Starting out with a new roof is always a good thing. One of the things I see a lot in this neighborhood, especially in the last few years with so much building going on, was manufacturer defects. We don't see them all the time, but we do see manufacturer defects like excessive granule loss. One shingle manufacturer in particular, I won't mention them by name so I don't get in trouble, but they had problems with the heating and cooling of their shingles in the factory where they were cooling too fast, not allowing the granules to adhere to the surface of the shingle, which they put it on the roof, and a week later or a month later, the gutters would be filled with granules and you could physically see patching all over the roof. So it's rare, but I've seen that on a lot of houses in my area, widespread granule loss due to manufacturer defects. So again, your suggestion is just going to be further investigation and inspection by a professional roofing contractor due to observable defects, granule loss. You don't have to get into such heavy detail. All right, then we're gonna make our way down. All right, so here we're doing some portions of the roof inspection through a drone. So we're looking at the chimney. Again, I don't see a spark arrestor on top of the chimney. I do see some wire netting, which is good. They're trying to keep pests out, things like that, which makes sense. You might actually get some excess water down there. But really I'm looking for the chimney cap, which looks like a mortar cap around the chimney. If we're looking right down here where the chimney meets the roof, I really want to look for the flashing. I want to see that the flashing is embedded in the brick so that the water goes around the flashing, down the roof, into the gutters. So what I notice with this roof is I see sealant around the flashing. So we see some stains in the bedroom upstairs. That could be related to that. So we're going to suggest that they either maintain that every year or that they have a mason or a roofing company come in and install that flashing embedded into the brick. That way that water works around the flashing instead of some just observations through the drone. That way we can kind of just let our client know we did the best that we could based on the conditions that were present. So obviously when you pull into a house and you're in a four-weather climate like Colorado, I'm used to limitations like snow all winter long. And so I still want my client to know I'm going to do the best inspection, and for those referrals from real estate agents, even though I'm not trying to be dependent on real estate agents, they're going to refer me out, and I want them to be able to tell their client, look, we have limitations with the snow, but your inspector's still going to do the best job he can. So I like to carry things like a drone. I also have a painter's pole with the camera attachment on top of my vehicle. I can hook a GoPro up to that, and then from my phone, I can actually look at the roof and do the inspection from the GoPro on the painter's pole at the edge of the roof, or from the ground, or from a ladder. So even though I can't always get on the roof and walk the roof, I can still do a decent inspection from the ground or from a drone. The reason I say a decent inspection is because I'm going to make sure my client knows that I was not able to physically walk the roof, and that there may be defects that I was not able to notice from the ground or from a camera on a pole, and that it's still in their best interest to have a professional roofing contractor come out and inspect that roof as soon as that roof is completely thawed out. Let's go ahead and talk about gear and your presentation of your gear. So I'm of the impression that you only get one chance to make a first impression with your client and possibly a new real estate agent that will refer you in the future. And so when I'm setting up my gear, I follow a system like I do with everything. So I put everything on a drop cloth. It just gives the impression that I'm clean, I'm professional. If I wear a jacket during the winter, I fold it up nicely, I display my logo. And also in my gear bag for that first impression, I make sure I show my tools so that I'm looking like a professional, and I like to display my CPI InterNACHI certification logo in my bag. Just lets them know who on earth did I hire. I want them to know when they show up to the inspection that they're confident that they hired a professional. So I'm displaying those things just to give them that impression and right away put them at ease with who they're working with. So I lay out my gear here. I use indoor-outdoor shoes, and I bring booties as an option just so I can put those over my shoes as well, especially here. You know, we've got white carpet. I'm going to make sure I keep all my gear over here. I never set any of my tools down anywhere except for back at my home base, which is this drop cloth. So I set everything there. That way I'm not worrying about losing a tool, because when I first started out, I lost plenty of tools and I wanted to make sure that never happened. So for me, it was coming up with a system that works for me. That way I look organized and I don't lose tools. So everything goes back here, and then I come back here to gather my tools. So different inspectors use different things for their tools. I like using a tool apron. It keeps everything I need during my inspection right on me. So I've got screwdrivers, I've got a plumbing spot here for kitchens. I'm gonna check the water pressure there. I've got moisture meters. I've got a very basic infrared camera here that's always on me. And then so I also have a carbon monoxide detector on me at all times. If I go into a crawl space, I make sure that portable carbon monoxide detector is on me. I don't feel like passing out in a crawl space. So most of my gear goes here. I use mobile software, so my phone goes right there. So I'm taking pictures with my mobile phone, putting it right into the software. It goes right there. So I don't like to have to come back here to grab another tool unless I have to. So I try to keep things moving. That's my system. And this is the presentation that I like to give to my clients. I keep all of my client information, real estate information on a spreadsheet here. That way I make sure that I greet them by name when they show up to the house. So I don't want to be confused. I try to not have to think as much as possible by having a system in place. So if I can't remember their name as they're pulling up to the house, I look at my spreadsheet. And I make sure I greet them by name. Same thing with the real estate agent. And just as I was saying, first impressions, when I'm meeting my client and that real estate agent, it might be the first time that I've ever worked with either one of them. So I want to make sure that I'm not only thinking about this inspection, but the presentation I'm giving, the impression I'm giving, I'm actually working for that next inspection as well. So I want to leave a good first impression. All right, let's get started on the interior inspection. So what I like to do, I start at the door, start next to my gear, and I've already explained to my client how I do the inspection. So I'm gonna follow one path around the house. In this scenario, I'm gonna start here at the closet. I'm gonna go upstairs, inspect upstairs, bathrooms, bedrooms, come back down and keep continuing the house as I get to those each system. So we're just gonna start here and get our interior inspection started. I like to look in the closets. I'm looking behind things. So right off the bat, we're in a house that's occupied. So that's gonna go in my report. I'm gonna mention that the house is occupied, so I can only inspect what I can see. So it's limited. My client knows that. I've set their expectations, made them realistic, but I can still do a great home inspection even if there are limitations. So I don't mind getting down, looking around things. I'm not gonna move, but I'm looking just corners. I'm looking high and low, and I'm gonna test the doors out. But when I'm looking in a closet, sometimes when my client's with me, they're kind of wondering, like, Jeremiah, what are you doing? Looking, you know, in these odd spaces in the closets. And I explain to them, I'm looking for signs of water. I'm looking for cracks, leaks, things like that. I'm always grabbing handrails. Again, hallways, your flashlight is your best friend during the whole inspection, your favorite tool. So I'm always using that flashlight at different angles. I'm putting it up against the wall. You know, I'm seeing things with shadows that I wouldn't normally see with the naked eye when I put a flashlight against the wall. So a lot of times you're going to see cracking, drywall splitting, things like that, things that have been repaired or covered up. And so those are the type of things I'm looking for. Typically when I get to the house, one of the first things I do, I walk inside, I get a feel for the interior. So I use all my senses. I smell. I want to see, what does the house smell like? So does it smell musky or moldy? I usually can tell those things with your first impression right as you get into the house. I usually walk around, turn all the lights on just to get familiar with the home, and then I run the water. So one of the first things I do when I get into the house, which I would have already done by now, is I would have already ran all the sinks, flushed all the toilets just when I walk in and do my general walk around. Now when I get started, I'm going to do all those things again, but just more in depth. So I'm going to get under every sink. Stopper mechanism is not working, so that's just going to go in my report. I'm running hot and cold water. I just want to make sure that it's producing hot water and cold water. And then if the stopper mechanism was working, I'm going to fill this up to the overflow. I'm not going to walk away while I'm doing that. And then I'm going to release the water. And while the water's draining, I'm going to be able to get a good look of what's going on under the sink. And so I can see the stopper mechanism's not connected, so we just need to get that reconnected. And I'll mention that in my report, have it serviced, reconnected. And then I also use a flashlight connected to my chest. So if I need both of my hands free, I just always have that option to have the flashlight on and off real easy. So things look good, nice and dry under here. I'll end up taking a picture of every sink. So I want to see a picture of water running. I want to see a picture of the conditions under the sink. I want to see limitations. If I see things under the sink, I've got a picture showing that I couldn't see what was going on over here. If it's dry, I've got a picture that it's dry. If it's wet or there's a leak, I'm going to get a nice shot with my flashlight showing the dripping water. So I open the drawers, just make sure things are operational. Get that water off. The little things are the big things. So that's all what I always tell myself in business is the little things are the big things. So anything that can make my life a little easier, like a outlet device on a magnet, it just makes my life a lot easier. The things I use the most, I have hanging from me, so I can just get my hands free real quick, write my report, get back to my flashlight and my tools. So we're gonna test every GFCI that we come across. If you can find the reset button before you test it, it's gonna make your life a whole lot easier. Toilets, a lot of times you'll find leaking toilets. So what I'll do, I'm gonna flush it. We're just gonna look at it. Personally, my trick, I stand on both sides, I shake it. If I find that toilet moving, I'm gonna suggest that they have it serviced by a professional plumbing contractor. You don't want it leaking at your seal, so if that toilet's shaking or it's loose, you're gonna get leaks, you're gonna get subfloor damage, and we want to avoid those type of things. So I look, sometimes I get leaks at the tank connected to the toilet seat. Sometimes you get leaks right around the base. So as I go through the house, if I'm walking around the house, a lot of times, I'll just walk past the bathroom, I'll run in there, I'll flush it real quick, keep going about my inspection, just so that I get as much water running through the house. And I tell my client, one of the things I'm gonna do is run a lot of water. If I run into the homeowner, the seller at the house, I just let them know. Just so you know, I'm gonna have all the lights on, I'm gonna run a lot of water. It helps me do a better inspection for my client, and it helps me at the end of the inspection find leaks. So obviously, I'm checking for hot and cold water, but my favorite thing to do is to make sure I run a lot of cold water. So at the end of the inspection, the tool I use for myself is a thermal imaging camera to help me do a better inspection for my client. So at the end of the inspection, if I run a lot of cold water, I oftentimes find a lot of leaks just seeing a nice purple dark spot on that thermal imaging camera, and then I can let my client know that we've got a leaking problem going on. We're gonna make sure we have hot and cold water. I carry a stopper mechanism on me. I like these ones. I've found that they're just more universal for the kitchen sink, bathtubs. All right, then we're gonna run the shower. Try not to get wet. Make sure that shower head's not facing you. If I didn't want a home inspector in my house, I would make sure that shower head was facing the home inspector, so I'd get them wet. But I've had enough experience with getting wet from shower heads. So just make sure that shower head's not facing you. Run your water. Make sure that the water from the shower is actually making it down the drain, and that you've got a nice swirl. So if I'm running the shower and the water's backing up, then we know we've got a clogged drain and that needs to be serviced. So I just like to see what we're seeing here. I'm running the water full speed, hot and cold water like I would when I'm taking a shower, and the water is making its way down the drain. And again, one of the things I like to do is get that stopper mechanism activated, fill the tub up at least halfway or 3/4 of the way with water, and I want to see all that water drain. I'm also doing that so that I can look for leaks below this floor later. Again, I'm checking tiles, I'm checking grout, I'm making sure that I don't see microbial growth. That's the word we like to use. I don't want to see moldy caulking around the tub. So if I do, that's a sign that that caulking is starting to fail. This looks good, but if it's black or other colors, then it's a sign that we might be getting water behind that bathtub. And so things look pretty good in here. Fan When we get to the attic, we want to see that these fans are exhausting through the attic to the roof. In houses this age, so we're 1980 here, it's very common to see the exhaust here going into the attic. Sometimes exhausting directly into the attic or just into a vent, but not through the roof. So if we see that, we'll just make a note. We're gonna make sure the door locks. Cool, the door locks, the door shuts nicely. We're inspecting where we're at. I'm going clockwise around the house. Left the bathroom, now I'm getting to the hallway, so now this is the area that I'm inspecting. So we've got a light, we've got a handrail on the staircase. I want to see a smoke and carbon monoxide detector. So we've got a smoke detector. We've got a carbon monoxide detector. So I want to make sure there's one within 15 feet of each bedroom. So that's good. You'll have to make the call on whether you test those or not. Standards of practice, I don't need to test them. I just need to make sure that they're present. I will make sure my client knows that it's part of being a homeowner. They need to make sure that they're testing them, making sure the batteries are replaced periodically. If I see a yellowed detector, I'm gonna have them replace it. It's just a sign that it's aging, it's getting old. Let's get a fresh detector in there to protect them. We're testing light switches. About the testing of these, so when I first started in home inspecting, I did test them. I hit one at a certain house and it set the alarm system off. So I ended up doing a 3.5, 4-hour inspection with the alarm system going off. So I don't test those anymore. I don't push the buttons. All right, bedroom. We're gonna come into the bedroom. First thing natural for you when you come into a bedroom is you're gonna turn on the light, right? So when I turn the light on, I'm gonna look at the light, notice that they've got a fan, and then I'm gonna wanna get this fan going. So I'm gonna test it on high. I wanna see if it's gonna shake, what it's gonna do. If it runs smooth, great. If it shakes or wobbles, I'm going to put in my report that it shakes and wobbles and that we need to have it serviced. So we've got this one running on high. I'm gonna let it go for a while I do the rest of this room and the bathroom. And then if it's shaking, I'm gonna make a note and then we'll have them have that serviced or suggest that they have it serviced. So, and that makes a good point. All of your report is gonna have suggestions. You can't force your client to do anything, but you're helping them become either a new homeowner or a homeowner in this house. And so you're making suggestions. It's up to them to follow them, but you're a resource for them. All right, we're gonna test the fan. Heavy wobble. I'm gonna make sure I get some good flushes on this thing. And I'm looking for water. Once you start seeing that kind of thing, a wobble, I'm already knowing that there's an issue or a defect going on. So I like to have my flashlight flush with the ground. If there's water, that water puddle is gonna cast a shadow. So that's what I'm looking for here. So obviously I'm gonna suggest they have this thing tightened down. Again, I'm pointing out that it wobbles. I might point out in my report that it could lead to these kinds of issues, but I can't confirm that there's issues with the subfloor. I can't confirm that there's leaking below the subfloor unless I see something on the day of the inspection. And so I'm pointing out my observations and suggesting that they have any necessary repairs made after further investigation by a qualified plumbing contractor. All right, next we're moving to the shower. I want to make sure that the door closes, that it seals. If there's glass in the door, you're not obligated to confirm that it's a shatterproof glass, but I am a good home inspector, so I'm going to try to help my client out by just taking a picture of that marking if I can find it on the door. That way they have peace of mind and they know that I've done a good job for them. So again, hot, cold water, we're going to get those things moving. I'm going to let it run for a little while until I see hot water. I want to make sure it doesn't scold me. I'm looking at the grout. I'm looking at the tiles. I want to make sure that there's no loose tiles. If I see that, that's obviously going to go in my report. A lot of times a sign of that is going to be that you're already seeing deteriorating grout, cracks in the grout, mold in the grout, things like that. And so I don't really see any of that here. So right off the bat, that makes me feel good about it. But only way to confirm it is to kind of touch those tiles, make sure things are draining nicely. And again, your flashlight's your best friend. So I'm looking for leaks, especially we're on the top floor. We've had snow in the last couple days. It's starting to melt off. So if we're going to find a leak today, this is a good time to find it because we have water on the roof. So that's just something that helps me as an inspector go, okay, if there's a leak here, I'm going to try to find it because we have that opportunity. Okay, so I'm getting the sink filled up. I'm going to start filling out the bathroom report as I'm going on my mobile software. So I'm going to start getting into that sink section. I'm going to know if I see functional drainage or not. I'm going to start taking pictures right into my report. So I always get a picture of every sink in the house. Make sure there's hot water, there's cold water. And now that the sink's full, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to drain it while I observe it. So I might take my flashlight out, take a look around, see if anything's leaking. I'm looking at the valves. I'm noting already we have copper plumbing, so no leakage, that's good. And again, your flashlight's your best friend, so I'm gonna look for shadows of water leakage, so right here. So again, like with the naked eye, I didn't notice that there was a leak there. But once I put my flashlight down, sure enough, it right away gets that there's a leak. So I'm just gonna take a note if I can see where it's coming from. But if I can't, I'm not gonna spend my whole day looking for the direct source. I did my job. So I did my job. My job was to make notes on my observations, what I'm seeing in the house the day that I'm there. So I'm gonna put that in my software and I'm gonna get a nice picture with the shadow so I can prove, hey, it was wet under the sink in the master bathroom the day of the inspection, and that's gonna go right in my report. I'm gonna open everything just to make sure that it functions. We're gonna open all the windows, make sure that they're functioning properly. Again, windows are a great place to look for cracking around windows and doors. Again, shadows are your best friend there. Making sure drawers work, testing outlets. I don't know about you, but most people are not excited about having someone they don't know in their house. So I make sure that I'm mindful and respectful of people's property, their belongings. I don't need to look in people's furniture. I don't need to touch people's furniture. I've trained myself to ignore people's personal belongings. So I don't stop to stare at their pictures, things like that. I'm here to look at the house. So I've trained myself to just ignore people's personal belongings, focus on the house, focus on the inspection. That way I am respectful, but I also am protecting myself and liability. Nowadays, you might come across more common. If I see cameras in a house, I'll tell my client, hey, feel free to walk around the house, get familiar, just be aware, we have cameras in here. When we talk about the summary, we're gonna talk about it outside. I don't want the home seller to be offended by anything that I say as I'm talking about their house with my client. So I'll say, hey, I'll keep my observations in a summary. We'll talk about it at the end, or we'll go outside and talk about those things. Again, I'm just trying to be respectful of the home seller. Make sure I lock windows. Again, I'm gonna take a picture of every room in the house. I want to make sure that my limitations are known. So I have a section in my report that just says general interior. My routine at the end of my inspection is to shut the house down. So that interior section, I actually walk the house, and as I'm taking a picture of every room, sometimes from one angle if I can get the whole room, but most time I'll take it from the doorway into the room, and then I'll come to the opposite side and I'll get a picture from this angle, so I'm seeing the other side. So a picture of every room is in my report. While I'm shutting the house down, taking a picture of every room, I'm also shutting all the lights off. I'm turning the fans off, things like that. So again, we got that. I thought this one was gonna wobble when we first started it up, but it's actually looking pretty good. We'll get that off. Again, closets are a great place to find things that you wouldn't normally find maybe out here. It's like most people, if there's a leak or something and you find it in a closet, that home seller, homeowner, current homeowner, they don't know about it. Most people aren't doing what I'm doing. They're not getting in their closet, looking at the awkward angles that are not natural on a day-to-day basis. So It's also a great way to set yourself apart, maybe from a home inspector that's not doing as thorough of a job. And when that real estate agent or your client sees you going out of your way, doing things like that, I oftentimes will look in a closet like this. They'll ask me why. I'll tell them that, and it just kind of sets me apart, says I'm doing a thorough job, and a lot of times it does impress them. We're gonna lock the doors, make sure they lock, make sure they close well, and then we can move on to our next room. All right, we're back in the hallway. So we worked our way this way. Now I'm here. So I'm noticing that we have a whole house fan. So I'm not gonna test this until we've got a window open. So a whole house fan, it's a great way to cool your house. It's becoming more, I'd say, old school now. We don't see these in a lot of newer houses. I really like the idea of a whole house fan, especially in the summer. A lot of people will use it to cool the house very quickly. They're oftentimes by the bedrooms on the upper level of the house. So you can turn the whole house fan on, open up some downstairs windows, and it's gonna bring cooler air in through the lower levels of the house, through the hallways, and just kind of really do a quick job of cooling the house down. It's not a replacement for an air conditioning system or an evaporative cooler, but it's an additional unit to help cool a house down quickly. A lot of people also use it when they're cooking. They've got, the smells going on. They'll use it to just exhaust the air through the house and bring it out and just kind of get rid of those odors. You do not want to activate the fan unless you have windows open. Otherwise, it can draw combustion air, so combustion gases, carbon monoxide from a furnace or a boiler into the house. So we don't want to cause a problem. We don't want to backdraft those appliances into the house. So always have an open window, lower level. It's going to pull that fresh air in. All right, so here we go. Again, I'm doing everything like I lived in the house. So we're going into this bedroom. I'm going to operate the door first. We're going to come in. My goal as a home inspector is not to note all the cosmetic defects I find in the house. The only time I'm gonna note a lot of cosmetic defects like a chip in the paint or a scuff on baseboard trim or something like that is if I find a lot of it. So if I find a lot of cosmetic defects, then I'll note them all as a general statement and say, a lot of cosmetic defects, lots of chip paint throughout the house. That's the only time I'm really gonna mention that. Otherwise, my client knows because I've informed them that I'm not here to inspect for cosmetic defects. So we're gonna test outlets. And I'm going to test every outlet for me. Typically, you only need to inspect or test a representative number of outlets throughout the house. I like to inspect every outlet that I can access. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm already making observations. So I'm noticing that we've had a leak or some issue here. There's a drywall repair, some stains from past leak or a current leak. What do I know? On the roof. So I'm noting that right now, but I'm not inspecting that right now because I'm following my system so that I do a thorough job, but I also don't get distracted and get off track. So what I want to do is I'm noting it. I saw it at the peripheral, but I'm not inspecting it right now. I'm going to stick to my system, make my way around the room, doing my general room inspection, and then I'm going to start inspecting the things that I'm noting. So we're going to work our way clockwise around the room, inspecting what we come to as we come to it. Again, roof access. You can see that there's snow on rooftops out there. So again, a house like this, if there's snow, and I generally like to get on the roof right away when I get to the house. If you can't, I like to do that towards the end of the inspection. Typically it's the first thing I do, but I want the things to heat up. If it melts off and then I get to get on there, that's gonna make my client really happy if I was able to access that roof for them, even in the winter time. So again, sometimes access point from a ladder. Some roofs are really hard to get on and you need multiple ladders, or they're seemingly impossible. Sometimes there's a route like this. You can ask the seller, hey, do you mind if I access the roof through the bedroom window? This is a really easy access point to get on this back patio roof. Again, making sure things are locked. The reason I stick to my system and I don't try to get distracted is I want to make sure that as I'm inspecting it, I'm closing, locking the windows, I'm leaving the house as I found it. Helps me rest easy when I go home at night. Also on the drive home, I'm confident that I stuck to my system and I didn't forget to close a window or turn off the stove, something like that. So again, looking for cracks, looking for leaks. I'm casting shadows on the ceiling. I'm casting shadows against the wall. That way, something if my naked eye doesn't stand out, I might see a shadow that I wouldn't have otherwise seen. So I went around the room, looked at the walls. Now I'm going to floor, ceiling. So I'm gonna look at the carpet. I'm looking for loose carpet. I'm looking for stains. I'm looking for rips, tears, any deterioration. Like attic access, we're seeing that the door, the access panel has some damage to it. So we're probably gonna get some air leakage in here. We're gonna lose some heat in the winter time. I'm seeing stains. So this for me, this is a great time to be inspecting this because we've got snow melting on the roof. So if this is an issue related to that, I might be able to, emphasis on the might, I might be able to see this wet today. If it's not, that might be a good sign. I can relay to my client that, hey, it was dry on the day of the inspection. I would monitor it or have it replaced or painted, things like that. So it may be an ongoing defect, or it might be just a cosmetic defect from a past leak. Same thing right here on the ceiling. So again, I can't predict what happened. I'm not going to try to speculate. All I'm going to do is note my observation. So inspector noticed a drywall patch from a past issue, possibly roof leakage. There's a stain from past moisture intrusion. You should ask the home seller about this condition, see if they can give you some information. I suggest further investigation and repairs by a professional qualified contractor. I'm gonna go above and beyond that. I'm gonna stick a moisture meter to that. I'm gonna look at it through a thermal imaging camera. Again, you have to decide how you market those things. I don't market myself as a thermographer. I use a thermal imaging camera for myself to do a better, more thorough inspection so that I can help my client out. I operate the doors on the way in and I operate the doors on the way out. I just want to see how they feel, how they close. I'm also looking for signs like, was the door shaved? Was the door shaved here? If so, why? It's worth asking the seller and saying, hey, are you having trouble closing the doors? Are you, and again, if this door rubbed, which it doesn't, I would go, okay, it's rubbing, they've had to shave the door. Do I also see cracks in the drywall? Which I don't. Things look good here. All right. Closets, we're inspecting as we go. Again, I'm going to close the door real quick. Things look good. This door does not have a lock. I'm just suggesting to my client, if you want to put a lock on the door, might be a good idea. Just FYI, you might need to change some hardware when you move in. I'm not a closet door inspector. It's not part of the agreement, but again, just to set myself apart, my brand, I do a thorough home inspection. I go above and beyond the standards of practice, but my client is not necessarily going to hold me to that, but I'm going to try to impress them by going above and beyond. So if I see an issue to my client just as a convenience so that they know that they might need to do some maintenance there. Again, I'm here, so I'm inspecting where I'm at. I'm at the window. I also have the advantage, I'm looking in the backyard. Standards of practice, I do not have to inspect the fence, but I'm gonna make notes, I'm gonna make observations. Personally, I like to walk the backyard, and as I'm walking the backyard, I put my hand on the fence, and I just see if there's a post that's damaged or rotted at the base, and I'll make notes of that. I'm also noticing that they have a retaining wall, so I'm just looking at the condition of the retaining wall. Seeing how it looks, noticing trees overhanging, things like that. Even like branches that might be damaged or broken, I'll put that in my report so that my client knows that they need to have that tree trimmed. Fan, we're gonna get it on high, let it run. If I'm gonna keep going with my inspection, and I just turned it on high, I'm gonna finish up, and as I do my final photos, as I was saying earlier, my general interior photos, when I get to this room, I have left it on high, so I'm gonna see what it's doing when we get back to it. As people upgrade an older house or newer houses, you not only do you have your traditional outlet, you also have a USB power source. In the rare case that my client asks me if those work, I do have a USB tester just to confirm that we are getting power at those USBs. So it's just something I keep in my tool bag, not necessarily something that I'm going to test every single day. But on the rare occasion, I've got a client that's really into tech. They want to know, do these things work? And rather than saying, I don't know, I like to say, well, let me test it. It's good for you, good for your brand. I'm always looking around. So again, I've already looked at this ceiling 3 times, but since I'm walking the hallway, I'm scanning, looking high to low, and now we're walking a different direction. So we came up this way, now we're walking the opposite direction, going downstairs. I may see something now this time that I didn't see before. Again, your flashlight, I get a Phoenix flashlight, I got an inspector outlet. I don't mind paying hundreds of dollars for a flashlight because this is my favorite tool as an inspector. So again, I want a flashlight that I like that can be dimmable. So sometimes the highest setting is just too bright. So I like a dimmer setting. So anything that'll help you do a better inspection. I check the railing every time. I don't mind pulling on it. That's what it's meant to do. That's what it's supposed to be used for. So if it falls off the wall, this is the time that it needs to do that so that I can alert my client it's an unsafe railing. So we're good. Coming downstairs. Again, I'm testing lights as I'm going around. This is the room we started in, but going clockwise around the house, we just are following that wall and we're making our way around the house. So now we're here. I'm going to ignore the kitchen and I am going to keep going. So one thing that disrupts my routine is I'm going to save the basement for last. The reason why I'm doing that is because I'm going to just tackle all the major appliances right at the end that are down there. So I'm going to stay on this level and go around. So we do have a tri-level house. So here on this side of the house, we've got a basement foundation, and then right here under us, we have types of foundation systems. So I know I've got a basement over here. Here, I've got a slab. So I'm not going to be able to see under this part of the foundation. Doesn't mean I can't look for signs of defects with it. So I like to, especially in older houses, in any house really, but I'm looking for how does the floor feel? Does it feel like it leans? Does it wobble? Can I feel displacement or unevenness? I feel it here already. So we're going to make a note of that mentally, and then we know we need to make further inspection of that as we get to it. At this point, I'm going to be filling out the laundry section. And the first picture I put in there is going to be a general picture of the laundry area. I want the limitations to be seen and known. So doesn't mean that I can't do a good inspection here. So typically what I'm going to do, make sure there's no personal belongings in these things. I like to turn them on. I will do a speed wash. So we're going to do a cold water speed wash. And in 15 minutes, we'll observe, make our observations, see if we find anything leaking, things like that. Same thing with the dryer. No personal belongings in there. I'm going to go ahead and just put this on a very short cycle. And we're going to run that. So I just want to make sure they work. I use a very simple thermal imaging camera from FLIR. This is like my grab and go thermal imaging camera. This is just for me. Once this dryer heats up, I'm going to take a picture of it in my software. And all I'm going to point out is just for me, for reference, is that it looks hot. So I can confirm if they say that dryer didn't work when we moved in or doesn't work when we moved in, I can look back at my photos and see, oh no, we were getting heat at the dryer on the day of the inspection. So here, limitations, I'm making sure these are operational. I always want to give something to my client instead of only mentioning my limitations. So I can't see the dryer exhaust from here. Maybe we'll be able to see it in the basement or confirm that we're getting air outside at the vent. But here, I can't inspect that. These are so high, we've got limitations with the shelves. I can't see the plumbing. I can't see the dryer exhaust, like I said. What I will do, again, your cameras is another great inspection tool for you. I'm going to turn the camera on, and I can actually see from here. I can see where the plumbing's at. So I can zoom, I can focus, I'll get a picture of the plumbing from behind, and then I'll review it, see if anything stands out to me. Bathroom, we're checking the exhaust. Again, we're going to fill the sink up. we're gonna check and see if the toilet wobbles. We're gonna flush. And again, I flush a toilet every time I pass it. I'm looking at any plumbing connections. I'm looking at the base of the toilet, the caulking, the sealant. If that toilet was caulked all the way around the base, I'm just gonna make that way, if we have a leak down here, we can actually see the water coming out. If you do it like this and you're leaking beneath your floor material, you have no idea until it becomes a bigger problem if water has been getting underneath your flooring. So you always want to leave a gap in that caulking at the base of the toilet. We're going to take a picture, the sink with water. Sometimes I put my flashlight on it, it makes the water stand out more in my photo. So I just want to make sure I get a picture showing we did have water. Hot and cold water is present. I'm going to run cold water for a while I inspect the sink. That way I can look for leaks later. A lot of leaks either at connections, the trap, or at the stopper mechanism. So those are the places I'm really looking at. All right, we're going to check the door closes and then it locks. Okay, so when I walked in the bathroom, I'm being distracted already because I'm noticing other things. I'm sticking it in my system. Now I'm going to come to those things that were distracting me. So uneven floor. So I feel that the floor is slightly uneven. This is not typical. On a slab, you're going to get movement, especially here in Colorado. We've got a lot of clay soil. We're really famous for moving slabs. So we're noticing here is, these holes in the tile floor. So right here we've got some holes. So anyways, that's just an observation. So we're going to go back, and if you notice, every so many feet, we're seeing another one here, another one here, another one here, and then right here, we're seeing an obvious crack. So we've got some issues going on here with the slab. So those are observations. What this is going to do, I'm not going to try to come to any conclusions thus far. It just makes me know, okay, note to self, I need to try to put the pieces together as I'm looking at the rest of the house. So this is just one piece of the puzzle. When I'm doing an inspection, you're looking at the whole house as a system. So here's my observations. I'm seeing that some work was done here to the foundation, to this slab, and I haven't looked at the foundation yet. So what I'm gonna do is see if, as I'm looking further investigation in my inspection, that I can put this puzzle together a little bit more for my client. We're gonna head out to the garage now. That's where we're at, going clockwise around the house. So we're testing the door, just looking to make sure it operates okay. Again, first thing I come across is the light, so I'm gonna turn the light on. I'm interested as a home inspector and personally because the things that we're noting on the slab right next to the garage, we've got visible foundation here. So I like that. That's what I like about a garage. When I get out there, I know if the house is finished, the basement's finished, I am at least going to get a peek at the foundation from the garage, the exterior, and possibly a crawl space when I have a crawl space. So I'm already making observations here. So we've got some cracking going on in the foundation. Again, I'm just maybe a more physical inspector. I love wearing knee pads. Most of the time I will put a knee pad on. I'll wear them during the whole inspection because that way I don't have to fight myself on do I need to get closer to that? Do I need to drop to my knees to look at something, get a better perspective, better picture? I just leave them on and I just hop up and down. It's not for everybody, but that's how I do it. So we got the crack here. I like to put a flashlight on the side of them. Gets me a better picture. Also, another thing that I carry on my person is a little ruler. I will just make a note. I'm not a structural engineer. My client, I made it clear to them that I'm not a structural engineer. But what I do, I take a picture of the size of that crack. I put it in the report. I'm gonna note that we're getting tighter at the top, wider at the bottom, and the size of that crack. So we've got another one here. This one's wider at the top, smaller at the bottom. So we've got ascending and descending closure on these cracks. I'm gonna put my ruler on them. I'm gonna snap a photo of that and I'm gonna make note. So I tell my client, if they're with me, I'll say, look, the size of the crack is not just the shadowy part that you see. in here there's loose concrete material in there. So this is actually the size of our crack. So a crack like this, to me, is more than a hairline crack. So looking at the cracking going on in the slab, I could try to speculate further. I already know, just based on what I'm seeing, the size of the cracks, issues on the inside, I'm already going to ask my client to suggest further evaluation by a structural engineer. And this is going to be not only for peace of mind to make sure that something a continual defect or continuing issue is not going to go on. So my job is to help them find defects that are going to affect the livability of the house, moving into the house, things like that. So I feel comfortable that I'm doing my job by making those suggestions based on what I'm seeing. So those holes that we saw on the tile floor on the inside of the house looked like mud jacking or foam jacking, something like that. So they have done some repairs. We just want to make sure they have paperwork from a structural engineer, and my suggestion to my client is that they have their own structural engineer come out and give them peace of mind based on what they gather through their reporting. So again, everything with a smile. Like you can see just how I'm relaying that to you. I'm not doom and gloom about these things. You can give any piece of advice, any defect, any finding in your inspection with a smile. So I tell my client, look, it's a house. Houses move, houses age, just like we do. They need maintenance, they need care. So I wouldn't worry at this stage. This is just one point in the process of purchasing a home. So when I step into the garage from the house, right away, we've got two systems. So we have a garage door and we've got the garage itself. So what I like to do, I'm gonna start with the garage itself. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that garage door closed. I've already looked at the garage door from the exterior. So from the exterior, the garage door looks okay. Now I've already got that in my mind, so now I'm looking at it from a different angle. So first thing I'm noticing is daylight underneath the garage door in different areas. When we look at that, we're pretty much gonna just mention, hey, the slab may have moved. I say may have moved, but it definitely has moved. I can tell that just by the cracking and the displacement here. So minor, very minor trip hazard here, but we can tell even over here, looking at the slab, that we've got different angles going on here. So we've had some slab movement. It's normal. My client, if you talk to them, a lot of people who don't know much about a house, when you start talking about anything concrete below us, they automatically think foundation. Oh my gosh, is that my foundation? So I make sure I educate them. I'm trying to be proactive. So if I get the impression that they think when I talk about cracks in the slab or movement in the slab floor of the garage floor, and I get the impression that they're thinking I'm talking about the foundation, I reassure them, hey, when we look over here, we're looking at the foundation right here. This is not our foundation. This is a slab. It's poured much thinner than our foundation wall. We almost expect to see movement here in the slab, especially in Colorado. So I'm reassuring them, this is not the house falling over. This is just normal slab movement, sometimes more than normal slab movement, which is what we're seeing here. So I'm going to suggest in my report that we have these cracks sealed with an appropriate sealant made for that purpose. That way we're not getting excess water. So every time that we have the cars come in here after a heavy snow, it's going to melt off and it's actually going to go in here. It's going to freeze, expand. It's going to cause this issue to get worse over time. So I'm going to educate my client about these types of things. That way they feel confident about what to do. I'm not just pointing out all the defects, I'm also empowering them to be homeowners. Garage, we're looking at the firewall. We're making sure that if there's a bedroom above the garage, there's actually a firewall in place, which is, you know, what we see here. So we've got the firewall surrounding the bedrooms. We're making sure that's in place. So we've already looked at the slab. We're going to make notes about the cracks and the movement that we see, the gaps underneath the garage door where we're seeing daylight. So are we going to get water, moisture under there? Yes, but I'm pointing out that you've got a pest entry point. So you are going to get mice coming into the garage through these areas. A mice can collapse its cage and it can actually fit through a hole about the size of your finger. So I'm just letting them know, be proactive, just kind of get that issue fixed before we have a larger issue. So again, we've looked at the floor, we've looked at the fire barrier, we've looked at the visible foundation. So I'm gonna let more daylight into the home or into the garage. That way now I'm gonna look at the foundation. So I get a peek at the top and the side of the foundation wall. I'm also looking for anchoring points if I can see them. If I can't see them, I make sure that I get good photos showing my limitations. So I'm seeing it here, I'm seeing it over here, a little bit of efflorescence, which is the white deposits we're seeing there, which is salt deposits moving through the wall as water has moved through there. Could have been 30, 40 years ago, it could have been last winter. So we don't know, we just point it out to make sure that we've put that in our report. We're gonna notice water spots. I'm gonna mention those in my report, just saying there were some stains on the ceiling or walls. Again, this house was built in 1980. So a house built in 1980, in the garage, I expect to see some of these kind of things. People have lived here. People have lived here for a long time. So if you're working on the car, you're moving things around, who knows? Splashes from the car coming in from a heavy rain or snow, we're going to expect to see these things, especially in a lived-in house. If I see something like that in a brand new build, a stain on the ceiling in the garage, to me, it's a much bigger issue. Here, it's a piece of a puzzle I might need to put together just by looking at the bathroom up above. Again, right here, thinking out loud, that stain that we saw, on the ceiling right over here, I'm already thinking, okay, we were in a toilet right above this area that was loose at its base, maybe. But that's for a professional plumbing contractor to figure out. All right, we get to the garage door. I'm gonna put it up and down. Again, visible limitations. So your car, it's a limitation. It's keeping me from doing a thorough inspection underneath. I'll do my best to see under there, but when I do my report, I'm gonna take a wide picture so I can see the entire garage. I'm gonna take a picture at different angles, and I'm gonna take a picture of the garage door. What did it look like when it was shut? So I wanna be able to see those gaps. I wanna see the condition of it. First thing was our initial observations. Operate, I'm gonna watch it operate. I'm looking at the coils up above. We're watching the rollers on the track. I'm just making sure every roller is in the track. So I've had doors where the rollers are hanging out of the track. It's not a fun way to see a garage door operate. Same thing here, all rollers are in the track. I'm noticing photoelectric sensors. So we've got the photoelectric sensors down there. This is gonna trip if we walk underneath it. It's at an okay height, so we want it at least below 8 inches. We've got them on both sides. We're gonna test to see if they work. I take a picture with my foot in the way of the photoelectric sensor. So I'm gonna stick my foot there, snap a photo, just like that. And then that's gonna go in my report saying that the sensor operated or did not operate. So it's gonna show that I actually inspected that. All right, next thing we're going to test is the pressure sensor. A lot of guys have different ways to test this. I am not going to stick something underneath it. I put a little bit of pressure on it. Again, I'm not pushing up on the door. I'm just giving it a tiny jolt, about 10 pounds of pressure, just to see if it goes up. So the door went up. Again, you're standing back far enough to where you're not tripping the photo sensor. That was the pressure sensor. So it operated. So if that comes down on a person, an animal, a car, it's gonna go back up. So it's a safe, one of 2 safety sensors. So we've got the photoelectric sensor and we've got the pressure sensor, and they're both operational, which is good. We just wanna make sure at least one of them is operational, suggesting that they have both of those sensors in place. All right, next thing with the garage door, we're gonna test the manual disconnect. So if you're trapped in your garage and you need to get out, you wanna make sure that your manual disconnect will release the door so that you can lift the door manually. I have seen inspectors pull the manual disconnect while the door is in the upright position. Not a good idea. Don't do that. If the door is not adjusted properly, that whole door can just fall. So I'm putting the door down. I'm gonna pull on the manual disconnect. Now, if the coil was too tight, this door could fly up by itself. So we're looking pretty good here. I wanna make sure that I can get that door up easily. So you can see it actually went up very nicely, very well adjusted. I didn't have to do much except get it started. If you get it started and it flies back and shakes the house, then you want to suggest having the door, garage door adjusted. So door's working very, very nicely. Again, pictures for my report. I get a picture like the one I have, my foot in the way of the sensor. And so I get a picture of my hand on the door showing that I put some pressure on it. And then for the manual disconnect, I get a picture of myself with my hand on the manual disconnect. So this is for me to look back and know that I actually inspected these things. And when my client sees the report or we have to look back on it together at a later time, I don't have to remember. I can just see that I inspected those things. All right, last thing I'm inspecting here is the button. This is gonna go into my report, just showing that the button actually works and operates. If I can find, usually on the counter in the kitchen, people leave it for me, the remote button for the garage door, I'll test that and take a picture of it, make sure my client knows that it's there. If it's not there, I just let them know it wasn't tested because it wasn't present. All right, we're back inside. We just completed the garage portion of the inspection. Last thing coming inside, make sure they have a fire-rated door. They have a heavy door. It's a solid door or a metal door, and that the garage door actually locks for security. We've got our indoor shoes back on. Again, it's up to you what you want to buy. For me, I've just learned I like having slip-on shoes. So if I'm going to do an inspection, I like being able to go in and outside freely if I'm wanting to look at something further. Just like here, we noticed issues in the slab. I want to step outside real quick. I can slide my outdoor and indoor shoes on really quickly. So that makes me feel better. As a home inspector, I had an observation that there was a past issue going on here or a current issue, and we were able to see some things that kind of tied those questions together. So that makes me feel good, makes me feel like I'm informing my client. We're noticing a brick wood burning chimney. So we want to make sure our hearth extension here, we're at least 16 inches out, which we look good here. We've got an ember barrier, so not only do we have glass doors, but we've got an actual ember curtain. So we're looking for safety. And then when I get in here, I'm going to make sure that my client knows my limitations. So I'm not inspecting the flue, so I can't see that whole pathway up to the outside. So I want to make sure they know that, but I am still going to try to do a good job looking at this chimney and doing a chimney inspection by giving them my observations and even going a little bit out of my way to see what I can see in this flue. So first thing I'm noticing when I look in here is that we do have an operational or a damper. I don't know if it's operational until I pull it. So I'm going to pull the damper. Always get out of the way because you might have some embers or some char that comes down. So it does operate. That's great. I'm going to take whatever picture I can take of what I can see of whatever portion of the flue is visible from here. So I'm going to use my zoom, get a nice zoomed in picture and a further out picture. I can't see everything, so I'm only going to note what I see. I see creosote buildup, so that's like ashy creosote around the flue, the visible flue from here. That can cause a chimney fire. I tell my client, if you're planning on using this chimney, you need to have the chimney cleaned as an annual part of your maintenance before you first use it. Also, I'll open up a chimney, and a lot of times what I'll see is it's either clean, so the current owner hasn't been using it, or it's got, ash and wood in here, so they might be using it currently. Oftentimes, signs of what you might see once you get on the roof is I might see a dead bird in here. I've seen a lot of dead birds in chimneys, so there might be a nest blocking this chimney flue. And it also means there's probably not a spark arrestor on the top of that chimney keeping those pests out. So again, I'm looking at the inside of the chimney. I'm looking for cracks. I'm looking for damage, and we're looking pretty decent here. We're looking good. It's just that creosote buildup. So I'm going to make sure that my client has this thing cleaned before they start using it. I guess one last thing, make sure you close the damper. Leave it how you found it. Again, come to a window or outlet. I'm going to operate it. Only time I operate the blinds is if they're down when I get to the house. So I'll put them up. But my client knows I'm not the blind inspector, but I am going to make notes if I see any obvious signs of damage. Again, I'm going to look for shadows on the ceiling. Again, this house, now we're looking at popcorn ceiling, was built in 1980. So it's right on the border of asbestos concerns. So they stopped using asbestos for products like texture, popcorn ceilings, things like that in 78. So this house was built in 1980. So things were still in storehouses. Some contractors were still using older products. So I put a note in my inspection report about asbestos, just to educate them about what is asbestos, what are the dangers of asbestos, and just to let them know, look, if you're going to do a complete remodel, or you're going to rip down a wall, open up a ceiling, my suggestion to them, just for their own safety and peace of mind, is to have the house tested first before they start busting open walls and making that asbestos friable, which is just releasing it into the air, making it breathable into your lungs. So, and also let them know, all the neighbors around here have it. You're not the only one that might have this concern. It's fine unless you disturb it. So keep it undisturbed. And we're getting to the door. We're going to make sure things are operational. That provided locks work. Condition of the glass. Again, I'm making a note here for my client. I don't want a key deadbolt at any door in the house. So again, if this door is locked and this key is lost and there's a fire in the house, you just prevented yourself from being able to exit out of the house. So this is a life safety issue. So this is something, things like this are definitely going to go into my summary as a major defect that is a life safety issue and concern for my client. So my suggestion is that they have these deadbolts replaced with a deadbolt that does not need a key. So again, you'll see this a lot in older houses. This family keeps the key in the door, which is a good idea. Best thing to do is just going to be to replace it. I know we've had some signs of movement going on with the slab here on the slab foundation. I'm noticing a little bit of drywall separation here. So what we noticed outside in the same area is a little bit of cracking on the patio slab. And then on this corner over here, we're noticing just neutral grade, so just flat grade. So it's kind of, I'm seeing movement here on the patio slab, a little bit of separation in the drywall. And then I'm seeing flat neutral grade here, which means water is going to be able to settle here against the foundation, right at this corner where the basement foundation and the slab on grade foundation come together. So again, when I see more things like this, it makes me feel better about giving my suggestion to have a structural engineer do further evaluation. So it puts me at ease, and it means that my suggestions are making sense. All right, going upstairs to the kitchen. Testing the handrails, light switches. All right, and we start moving clockwise around this room. So just a little bit of imperfections here in the drywall seams. This is not abnormal. Sometimes things like this can be confused with moisture damage. You might look at this and think maybe there's a leak here. The more experienced you get, the more educated you get, the more accurately you're going to be able to report on these things, and the better you're going to be able to inform your client. So when I look at these, I can see that this is just the drywall tape, just kind of a poor job at the initial build drywall tape. I'm not concerned about a leak there. Same thing here. That's just the work that the original builder did, or his contractor did. I'm not impressed by that, but that's just the way that is. Testing outlets that I can access. Again, plaster crack, drywall crack right here above the outlet. Again, makes sense, seeing what we saw outside and what we've seen in this corner. You will note outside on the exterior portion of the inspection, we did see that a wall was built to raise the grade around the outside of the house. So that's a good thing. That means this homeowner was probably being proactive to correct the grading issue. So when I first come into the house, I like turning all the lights on, raising all the blinds. That way I can get as much natural light into the house to help me do a better, more thorough inspection. All right, we do have a bay window. We're gonna make sure that these windows operate. A lot of times with a wood framed window like this, these will be more difficult to operate depending on the season, because the heat, moisture content, it's going to make this frame expand and contract. So today it's operating well. I'll tell my client if they're with me, I'll say, I mean, you might have different times of the year where this window operates better than other times of the year, just due to expansion and contraction of the frame, like that right there. So sometimes with these, you got to make the decision, do you want to open it or do you want to leave it closed? If you open it and it was sticking like that, you're probably going to have to go outside and push that window back in. So sometimes it's just as easy to do that, to do a good inspection for your client. Sometimes if you're not going to be able to reach that window, don't open it. Leave it how it is and let your client know that it sticks. They might want to have it serviced. Okay, so we're in the kitchen. One of the things I do when I first come into the house, we talked about the tool setup, my home base. I put a drop cloth there. And then the next thing I do is I set a counter in the kitchen up for my client. So there's certain things that I bring to every inspection that I either leave behind or I deliver to my client and the real estate agent. So first thing I do, I call this my leave behind letter. This is a resource. If you're a InterNACHI member, you get to access this document. I copied and pasted it and made it personal to my business with my logo. This just thanks the seller for letting me in their house. And it also sets them up to invite me to inspect the next house that they purchase or in the future. So just thanks them for letting me be here. And it reminds them to check the door locks, window locks, lights, alarm codes, thermostats, GFCIs, gates, faucets. Make sure that the house is back in the order that they want it to be in, and check some of those things. So peace of mind for me, helps them, lets them know that, that I was trying to be careful with their home. Also, I leave behind my information for the seller, and I've had sellers contact me to do inspections for them. I've also had a couple complaints, but that's just part of being a homeowner or a business owner. Is as a professional, I'm giving them the easy ability to contact me, and I think that's what a professional should do. So again, I give all of my clients now that you've had a home inspection book from InterNACHI. Inside of that book, I put my business card. I also print out a written copy of what really matters in a home inspection, and this lets them know what I'm doing and what my limitations are. Lets them know that I'm looking for major defects, like structural failures, things that lead to major defects, things that would hinder their ability to finance or occupy the home, and safety hazards. And when I get to that point, there's a speech I give all my clients. It goes like this: welcome to the home inspection. Let me take a minute, let you know how I perform my home inspection. And what to expect when you get your report. So I start on the roof. I work high to low. I follow the path of water. Water is the #1 destroyer of homes. So what I'm looking for is that path of water around the exterior of your house. So I start on the roof. I'm gonna work my way down, follow the house clockwise around. When I get into the house, I'm gonna do the same pattern inside the house. I'm gonna follow the walls of the house clockwise and inspect as I go. I'm not texting or checking my email or Facebook. I'm doing the inspection as I go on mobile software on my phone. So if you see me on my phone, that's what I'm doing. I'm filling out your report as I go. That way I can get that report to you as soon as possible. So I'm gonna do my best to get that report to you today. Once you get that report, don't be intimidated by the size of it. Reports are large. I have some reports that are 30 pages long. I've had reports as long as 90 pages. Don't let that intimidate you. I'm gonna summarize these defects that I just mentioned. Major defects, structural defects, safety defects, or just anything that I want to bring to your attention on the last couple pages of the report. So if your report is 50 pages long or 60 pages long, your summary might only be 1 to 4 pages long. And look for that. That's going to really help you decide what I felt I wanted to bring to your attention, what I felt was major, and your real estate agent is really going to be looking for that summary. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't read the rest of the report, but I'm trying to help you focus on what I thought was concerning or major. Also, so that's the spiel I give to all my clients. It helps set them up for realistic expectations. Also, it helps them know what to look for in that report so they're not confused when they get it, and that when that report gets to them, it's not like they're seeing it for the first time. Jeremiah, my inspector, told me to look for the summary. Summary's at the end of the report. It's all in red. And then I asked them, hey, do you have any questions for me? Another thing I like to do after I give them the speech is say, hey, feel free. This is a great opportunity for you to explore the house, look around. I know you didn't get to see it much, you know, with your initial walkthrough. Now's a great opportunity while I'm doing the inspection to take a look at the house. I'm doing two things there. They're excited to look at the house, so I'm giving them the freedom to walk around and check out the house. I'm also releasing them from having to follow me around. So I'm going to be able to do, again, they're invited to follow me around. I'm going to be able to do a better inspection if I can freely walk around, go back and forth to my tools, and operate without someone looking over my shoulder. I also give this to the agent that they're working with. Just gives them free and exclusive online education for real estate agents for CE from InterNACHI. And on the back, I put a sticker business card on that. That way they know how to contact me to refer me to their future clients. We're gonna start with the dishwasher because it's the first thing we come to as we're working around the room. I'm gonna just check, see what's in there, see if it's okay for me to start it. I'm gonna do either an express wash or a rinse only. I'm gonna get that started, close it up. When I do, either when I get done with the kitchen or when I do my final walkthrough, doing my general interior photos, I'm gonna come back here, again, casting a shadow, seeing if I see any leaks, and I'm gonna rub my hand along the floor and just see if that dishwasher is leaking, and I'm making sure that it operated. Again, we're just gonna open the cabinets, make sure the cabinets open and close, windows as we come to them. This is where your plumbing pocket comes in handy. I'm gonna stick my stopper in there, and I'm gonna let the sink fill up. So I'm gonna start with hot water, just make sure that we're getting hot water in the sink. I am not going to leave the kitchen while I have the water running. I'm gonna let that fill up while I'm walking around the kitchen. But again, I don't wanna walk through or walk away from a sink with a stopper in it while the water's running. Gonna open and close doors, look at shelving, make sure the drawers aren't falling out on me. We're gonna test outlets. I want a GFCI outlet. So this outlet's loose. Just means it's worn. A lot of times on older houses, I'll put a statement, because I'll see the ground prong area on the outlet. I'll see that broken, and it'll be a common theme throughout the house. So I'll put a general statement with a picture of a damaged outlet saying, this condition existed throughout the house. I suggest you have these outlets replaced by a professional electrical contractor. Again, GFCI. We want to test our GFCIs. We want to make sure that any outlets near a sink are connected to a GFCI outlet. In an older house, we're not expecting that seller has upgraded everything according to modern building standards or code. They're grandfathered in. They don't have to upgrade these things. But as the house is changing hands, I'm letting my client know this is a good time for you to upgrade these things for your own safety. They can't necessarily go demand that the current seller does everything for them, but I'm letting them know that this is something they should do. So now we're gonna release the water. I'm gonna look underneath the sink. I'm looking for any signs of leaks. I'm gonna run the garbage disposal. Not only am I noting my observations, I'm listening. If it's noisy, I'll suggest that they have it serviced, repaired, replaced as necessary by a professional. And then again, I'm looking for the signs of leakage. I'm also seeing that the plumbing is grounded right here, connected to the electrical system, so that's good. I don't have to look for it later. When I get to the panel, I can just already note it. And then I'm also gonna take a picture. My pictures, again, are going to be a picture under every sink cabinet. I'm gonna get a picture of the plumbing, the valves, obviously defects if I find them. And while I'm taking some of those pictures, I'm gonna get water in the other side of the sink. Again, I don't mind moving something like the dish rack if there's nothing in it, but if the sink's full, that's just gonna be a limitation. So I'm just gonna take a picture, show that, okay, the sink was full of dishes. I'm not going to remove all the dishes. The rest of the kitchen, again, I'm looking operational. It's not in the standards of practice for me to inspect major appliances. As a convenience for my client, I'm just opening it up. Is there cool air? Is it operational? Same thing. Is the ice frozen? Is the food frozen? So it works. Doesn't necessarily have to go in my report. Again, if I see damaged shelving, something like that, in a cabinet, I'll mention it. A lot of times you'll find an outlet above the microwave for the microwave. I'm going to test that one because I can reach it. Can't reach all of them. I can't tell you how many times in new build construction I've had one of these outlets not operational or not wired correctly. So, all right, microwave. Again, on me. Again, like I said earlier, I don't like going back to my home base. I like to keep moving. I use the InterNACHI microwave tester. Inspector outlet. I'll just turn it on for a little bit. I just want to make sure that those fuses light up. Typically, I'll be ready with my camera. And as soon as that lights up, just do a little, hit the 30-second button. I don't leave it in very long. That's all I get. Just get a picture showing that the microwave operated. Lights, fan. Again, I'm not moving on to the oven or stove until I'm done with the microwave. So I will get a picture from below showing that we had lights and that the fan works. If the fan works, for me, I'm showing the light and a thumbs up. If the light's on and my finger is crossed, then I'm showing that there's a defect, and I'll make a note in my report right now showing that the fan was not operational or something like that. All right, oven. I'm making sure there's nothing in the oven before I operate it. I'm going to try to tilt the oven, make sure there's a safety device, which there's not. So we want to make sure there's an anti-tilt safety device at the base of the oven so that if a child steps on this door, it doesn't flip the oven over on top of them. So that's going to be a safety concern and a suggestion for my client to add a safety tilt device for the oven. All right, there's nothing in there. I'm not going to melt their pans or dishes. I'm going to go ahead and get the oven on. I like this type of range. It's for inspection purposes. It makes for a great picture. So these are going to turn red as they turn on. Some newer ranges, you have to actually have a device on them, but in order for them to turn on. But for this, for the photo op, I'm going to be able to see through my thermal imaging camera that they're working, even if they're not turning red. So I try to get a picture of them turning red. I also, if I can't get that, I'll get a picture through my camera, my FLIR, that those burners were hot. So I can come back and say the burners did operate. I don't move on from this until I turn them all off. Again, part of my final walkthrough when I'm taking my final photos is every room I'm turning things off. So when I get to the kitchen, I actually take a photo just like this with my hand on this, and I can see that that red dial is showing that the burners are in the off position. I like the homeowner version of the FLIR infrared camera. I've got a nicer one in my bag over here, but this is just quick while I'm doing things like this. So here I can actually see the oven is actually getting hot. So I just like it as a photo just to put it in my report. It's quick off and on startup time with that camera. Okay, moving on from here. We're gonna make sure it's off. And then I usually get a picture of my finger on the off button. of the oven. So I just like that for my own good and for the safety of the homeowner. We've got one attic access panel there. I do the attic last. So we've got 2 attic access panels, one here on this level and one on the upper level in the bedrooms. I like seeing things, every wall, every corner. I like seeing everything in natural light and with the flashlight. I'll mention minor cracking around windows and doors. I don't necessarily consider it a big concern. It's just one thing to note. So if I start seeing doors sticking, windows sticking, major cracks on the foundation, then it becomes a piece in a bigger puzzle. I'll mention loose outlets need to be tightened up by a professional electrical contractor. I'll take a picture, I'll put an L with my fingers next to that outlet, and that just lets me know it was a loose outlet. If I see a miswired outlet, obviously I'm going to take a close-up photo of the code on my device just so that I know what to tell my client. When things are in the way, you got to make a judgment call. I don't necessarily want to go leaning on the furniture, so inspect what you can. If you can reach the windows, then open and close them. You're going to inspect and report on a representative number of windows and their condition. So I've so far, all the windows we've come to, except for that one bay window, have operated just fine and smooth. They look fairly new. They're double pane. So I feel good already about how this window is going to operate. If I can get to it, I'm going to. If not, I've inspected a general representation of windows throughout the house. All right. Making sure doors are operational. Checking the doorbell. And deadbolts. This is the kind of deadbolt we want to see on the door downstairs. Obviously handrails. So our hardware for our handrail is damaged right here. So we're going to make sure we point out that to our client just to have the hardware replaced. So we've got an unfinished basement. I like unfinished basements because as a home inspector, I get to see more of the foundation as I would otherwise be able to see. Also on an older home in Colorado, we've got exposed foundation walls. On the newer homes, they're starting to insulate the walls, so you don't really get a good look at them. So here, we're going to inspect what we can see. Most homes with an unfinished basement, it's used like this for storage. So I'm looking at exposed framing, I'm looking at the staircase, I'm looking at plumbing we've got underneath the sink. So if there's a leak going on, a lot of times we're going to see the history of those leaks from 1980 until now. We're going to see a lot of history. So that's why confirming things like stains with a moisture meter, infrared camera is really going to help you go a long way in giving your client the best advice and inspection. Saddle valves, we've got a saddle valve here, taking water to the refrigerator most likely. With the saddle valve, I don't like to see them. They've got a rubber gasket surrounding the area where that valve pierces the copper pipe, leading to this, so that releases water into this pipe, leading to the refrigerator and the ice maker. That rubber gasket can wear out, dry out, and it's a really common place to get a leak. So I like to see those valves replaced by a plumber with an actual valve tied into that copper pipe. An older home, we're not using this basement as a bedroom. So if I saw the client or the seller using the bedroom as a basement, or as using the basement as a bedroom, then I'm going to suggest that they upgrade their egress. Here, I may still suggest it, but their egress window would not meet modern requirements for an escape window for a bedroom. So I'm going to put a note about that in my report, letting my client know if you're going to add a room or finish the basement, then you're going to need to upgrade your window for modern egress requirements, for an escape path, for the occupant or for an entry point for the fire department to get into the basement. Most likely for security purposes, these windows are covered with metal. So I'm going to let my client know that they're going to want to remove those. That way you do have an escape path. The current homeowner, again, is not using this as a bedroom, so they were not concerned about that, but I need to inform my client that they should make these types of upgrades. I like to look high and low every angle of every room, but especially the basement. So I'm looking at floor joists. So we have overlapping floor joist over a beam, which sits in pockets in the foundation wall. Those beams are held up by screw jacks. So I want to see here, I'm not going to be able to see it, but I like to see those screw jacks embedded in the concrete or bolted to the concrete. So I can't confirm that here. Up top, I want to see them welded to the beam or bent over the beam like so. So that's our foundation floor structure supporting the upstairs floor. Things look good. Again, we're going to come around here. We're seeing a lot of hanging electrical. So I'm also seeing power cords used permanently to power some of these lights. What I'm going to suggest to my client is that they have an electrician give them the proper power. So outlets, switches, things like that. They've done that in some areas, but when you see power cords used permanently, we want to make sure that we suggest to our client that a power cord is for temporary use, not for permanent use. Otherwise, we consider it a fire danger or fire hazard. I'm looking for signs like cracks, signs of leakage, efflorescence, which is white deposits on the wall that would show signs of leakage, past leakage, moisture intrusion, things like that. I don't see anything like that, so I'm feeling pretty good about this foundation wall, at least on this side of the house. Also, this white pipe coming up from the ground, we've got a radon mitigation system installed. So with that radon mitigation system, I'm just gonna let my client know you have a radon mitigation system installed with a continuously running fan on the exterior. I'm gonna let them know what they're looking at here. So this fluid line is just telling us that the fan is active, the fan is working. If this fluid line ever sits level, we know that there's a problem with the suction here and we need to have it serviced. So when we see this fluid level offset, we know that the fan is actually working to draw air. So I let my client know this is not a reading of your radon level, it's just letting you know that your fan is working. Also, it's going to have who installed the system and how to contact them. This system, it's unique in that we have a tri-level house, right? So we're in a basement here. We've got another portion of the house sitting on a slab on that side. So not only do we have this, the fan drawing air from under the basement slab, we also have a tube going that way across this beam, and it's pulling air out from the slab on grade on the lower portion of the house in that direction. So we've got a mitigation system drawing air from here and from there, and that's what I'd like to see. I'm going to inform my client it's time to do a radon test. So you're buying a house, we want to know that this system is actually functioning. So we need to have a radon test done on this level of the house and on the slab level of the house to make sure that this mitigation system is keeping levels below 4 picocuries per liter. So again, just because you buy a house with a radon mitigation system, that doesn't confirm that your radon levels are where they're supposed to be. So it's time to do a radon test just to make sure that system's working. And then every couple of years, they want to do a test just to make sure that that system is keeping the levels. So observations, the basement's carpeted. I'm mentioning that limitation. I can't see most of the slab, but over here, it's obvious that this seller has had to cut back this carpet. Either they have or the person before them. Either way, I'm going to ask my client by suggesting in my report that they asked for the story. You know, what happened here? You know, was there a leak? Is there a moisture problem? Why did you have to cut the carpet back? Typically, you've got a water moisture intrusion issue and you've had to cut it back just to get things to dry out. Now we're looking at the plumbing. We've got copper plumbing. So I'm going to mention to my client what type of plumbing they have. I'm also going to point out their shutoffs. So we've got the plumbing coming into the house here. Right here, we've got the main water shutoff. Right here we've got a pressure regulator, and then we're branching out to an irrigation system. So I don't inspect irrigation systems. My client knows that I don't inspect what I can't see. So I don't turn on the irrigation system. There's too many variables underground that I can't inspect, that I can't confirm. I don't want to damage something or run something that I can't see. So I let them know. Though I don't inspect the irrigation system, I will point out any obvious defects or damaged valves, leaking valves, things like that while I'm at the house. They should have the irrigation system inspected by a landscape professional. All right, here we got the irrigation system. I'm going to look at the condition of the valves. I'm going to point out any corrosion that I see. We're just seeing discoloration just from years of winterizing the system, from spilling over. I'm not seeing this as a major issue. The system has been winterized, so we couldn't inspect it even if we wanted to. So that's a good thing. That's a positive. I tell my client this time of year, your system looks like it's already been winterized and disconnected. So you're good to go there. At the beginning of the season, have it inspected, put back into working order. Good time to have that professional give you their opinions and find any valves or sprinkler heads that aren't working. Moving along the basement, we've got your main gas line coming in here. There's this black pipe coming in from outside where your gas meter was located on the right side of the house. Again, even though I've got limitations, I've got storage, shelving, things like that, that's not going to stop me from doing my best inspection. So I'm going to look around, see what portions of the foundation are visible, and I'm going to inspect those. We've got the foundation here that we can see visible portions of. Again, another thing I'm going to point out is just going to be main cleanouts. So here you've got your main sewer cleanout. So if you're going to have a sewer scope performed, that's where it's going to be done. We've got plumbing coming from the laundry area. When I get to the ground, I'm noticing right in line with the sewer cleanout, we've got some spray paint here. Typically, they've had something located, either a sewer line damage or issues, a clog, who knows. All right, we're making our way to the water heater and this just section of the basement. So we've got a lot going on over here. So first thing I'm noting is over here, I can see the exhaust for the dryer for the laundry coming in right here. I'm just making sure it's connected. I'm gonna look at it here. I'm kind of following it and making sure it's connected going to the exterior. I'm gonna estimate, this looks like, picturing my body laying up against that exhaust vent. I've got about 12 to 18 feet going on there. I just want to make sure that it doesn't exceed 25 feet from the dryer to the exterior. So we're looking good there. Water heater, I'm looking at your water lines coming into the house. So they're insulated, which is nice. Right here, let's see, we've got another saddle valve that's connected to the cold water line here. The saddle valve is no longer in use. So it's actually been disconnected right here. It's been cut and the valve is shut off. That's a good thing, but I would still suggest having this saddle valve removed and this portion of the line replaced. That way we're not dealing with a failed gasket. So again, water heater, we're looking at the plumbing coming into it. We're looking at valves, condition of the valves. I'm looking at the water lines going into the water heater and the fittings. What I'm noting here, my observations, I'm seeing these plastic escutcheons or plastic pieces here where these water lines go into the water heater. I can tell that they're warped. That means we're getting possible backdrafting, so a release of gases possibly from this exhaust that is melting these escutcheons. So I'm going to make a note to my client for safety to have this thing inspected by a plumbing professional and any necessary repairs made for their safety. So that brings to mind, I want to make sure that on this level there is a carbon monoxide detector. Walking around, I don't see a carbon monoxide detector, so I'm going to suggest that they put one on this level. So we want a carbon monoxide detector on each level of the house and within 15 feet of each bedroom. So I'm going to make sure I suggest one here and one on the level with the fireplace. Valves look good. We're making our notes about what we're seeing around the combustion area and the concerns that we see. We're looking to make sure that the hot water exhaust is above the furnace. So we're looking good here. It's actually coming in after the furnace pipe. So we're looking good. We're gonna look at general condition. So again, high and low. I'm gonna start high, just look at the general condition. I'm looking for any signs of leakage, rust, deterioration. Now I'm gonna get low. I'm gonna look down. A lot of times I'll physically see the bottom of a water heater rusting out. You might see actual leakage. We're looking okay there. TPR valve. So I'm gonna look at the TPR valve, temperature pressure release valve. I'm not going to operate it because if there's something wrong internally with that valve, I don't wanna be the one to cause further damage. I'm just looking to make sure it's present. So we have our TPR valve, our TPR discharge pipe. It looks good. I wanna make sure that it directs to the floor. It's not just sitting here spraying. So if we have a pressure issue with this tank, this valve should release and release that excess pressure. We wanna make sure it's aiming at the ground, not at an occupant for safety. So it's aiming towards the drain. We're looking good. It's at least 6 inches from the ground. That's good. Again, branding. I'm gonna report general condition. It's a GE appliance. We're looking at the serial number, the model number. I love this already. This makes my life really easy because it has the manufacturing date right there. A lot of times you're looking at the serial number to find the manufacturing date. Here, it's got it for us. That makes our inspection go a little bit quicker. So what do we have? We have a natural gas appliance, natural gas coming into this. We've got our manufacturing date, 2009. I'm gonna let my client know the date it was manufactured and that this appliance is getting towards its life expectancy. So water heater, you're looking somewhere between 10 and 15 years. This is getting there. If it's working, doing its job, then we're happy with it for now, but I'm letting my client know, hey, start setting money aside so that you're ready when this thing goes out, because it could go out any day. It's getting up there in age. I did a apartment maintenance in a past life, I guess, and the building was 15 years old and water heaters were going out all the time. So without maintenance, I tell my client, expect that thing to go out if you're not doing the annual maintenance right around its life expectancy. If you're doing annual maintenance, which most people don't, then you could get a water heater to go a lot longer than that, but you can't guarantee those things. Before I get to the burn chamber, again, we said we're looking at a natural gas water heater. So we've got our gas line coming into the house. I'm going to point out gas valves. It's not the greatest gas valve ever. I would suggest an upgrade to this gas valve, something like this. Here with this gas valve, we're gonna need a tool to shut this off. You're not gonna be able to shut it off by hand. So I would suggest an upgrade on that valve. That way in an emergency or when you need service, you can shut it off by hand. So we've got our natural gas coming in. On the gas valve here, typically with an older water heater, if I see that thing on very high, I know that they're struggling to produce heat. So that's another thing I'm going to point out to my client. Hey, you know, another observation I'm making, you're probably about ready to need to replace this thing. So I'm going to leave it where I found it. I'm going to take a picture of it, make sure that when I leave the house, I have the settings exactly where I found them. I'm going to get a little look into the glass here. We've got a closed chamber, which means we have a limitation. So I can't say that I inspected that chamber. So I'm going to say that it was not inspected, but it was observed from the glass. And I'm going to do my best. Before I turn that flame on, I'm going to get my flashlight, my smaller flashlight, and I'm going to try to get a look into that chamber. Because a lot of times I'm going to be able to, I'm seeing flaking, which means some deterioration on the top and the bottom. So if you see those flakes, that means that some corrosion has happened inside the water heater. Again, I'm not guaranteeing everything in there because I can't see everything in there. We got a nice blue flame. That's what you want to see. And then I'm going to get a picture of that flame. I'm also going to show that I couldn't get in there. I could not take that cover off. I'm going to make sure the settings are back. They had it on B. I'm going to leave it on B. I'll give you a little story just for customer service perspective. One time in 8 years, I left the water heater on the hotter setting, and I had a family complain to me that they got scolded by turning their water on. I felt really bad about that. I apologized on the phone. First thing I did when I was done with the current inspection, I went and got a gift card for dinner. And I noticed that the husband had a really nice Yeti bottle opener in his garage. Went to Dick's Sporting Goods, got a bottle opener, gift card, went directly over to their house and apologized in person and said, hey, I'm really sorry for that. That's not something I usually do. And I just want to treat you to dinner and give your husband a new bottle opener for the next house that you guys are moving into, because that was the seller. And I did not want to get a bad review online from the seller and also have them complain to my client or the real estate agent that referred me. So the sooner you can make something better, be humble about it, apologize, and go out of your way to give excellent service, the better off you're going to be. So again, mistakes happen. Try to limit those mistakes by having a routine. All right, so now we're at the furnace. We're looking at the furnace flues, venting. We've got registers down here, so we do have a heated basement, cooled basement. That's good. Otherwise, we would want to suggest that they have these vents insulated. But because we are heating and cooling the basement, they're in good shape. All right, so we're at the furnace. I'm going to point out gas shutoff. I'm going to point out the electrical shutoff, overall condition and observations. I'm going to point out the filter location. I'm also going to take a picture of the size of the filter. So I see this a lot, the size of the filter marked on the access panel to the filter. If it's not there, I'll take a picture of the actual filter size. That way my client has it as a reference. So I'm just going to look at general condition. This kind of gives me a hint if they have been servicing their filter or not. So we have a nice white filter. That means they're changing their filters. Also, I'm looking at the arrow here. So a lot of times I see these backwards. You've got an arrow on your filter, so the airflow comes this way. You want to make sure that arrow's pointed with your return air going over the filter back into the furnace. So our filter's installed properly. In the filter area, I can actually see the blower. I can see beneath the blower. So I'm looking for dirty blower vanes. I'm looking for signs of condensation and water getting inside of there or built up in there. So rust, and we're looking okay. The blower looks clean. A lot of times I see those filthy, dirty, or oil on the inside of those. And if I see that, it's an obvious sign that we're having issues and that needs to be serviced. We're gonna sniff the gas lines. Well, first I'm gonna open this up. Part of both the water heater and the furnace are both natural gas appliances. So I'm gonna use a gas leak detector, a sniffer. So I carry backups. So most of my electronic tools, I carry a backup of. So I've got multiple gas sniffers. I've got multiple outlet testers, moisture meters, things like that. So I'm gonna sniff every line and fitting. It really doesn't take long. Again, like I had mentioned earlier, I'm using all my senses. So when I get into the basement, I'm sniffing for mold, mildew. I'm sniffing for natural gas. A lot of times I'll smell natural gas before I bring the sniffer out. And then I only have to use this to confirm where it's coming from. A lot of times you will pinpoint where a gas leak is coming from, and then they'll come back to you and say, we had a plumber come over and they couldn't find it. They didn't notice it. And it's because they're not using a tool like this. So if I do find a gas leak, in my bag upstairs, I've got red or yellow tape. I'll tape exactly where that gas fitting is. That way, if that confusion comes into play, I can say, hey, I taped it for the plumber, have them tighten up those fittings and inspect for further issues. We're looking in the chamber. We've got our motors. We've got our blower motor down here. Our door does not have a safety switch. So typically when you take off the combustion chamber door, it's going to shut everything down for you right away. The reason this one doesn't is because all the moving components are enclosed, so you can't come in contact with them. So again, this is why it was important to see what we could see from the air filter compartment. So in this compartment, we were actually able to see underneath this blower and see the blower itself. So I'll stick my camera in the air filter compartment and take a picture of the blower from there, because from this angle, we're not going to be able to see anything. Turn the thermostat up a few degrees, noting where it was at. So you want to make sure it was set to 70. When I leave, I'm going to make sure the thermostat is set to 70. So, all right, we're heating up. I'm going to get ready. I like to put a video in my report of it heating up. So make sure you know the cycle. So once you start seeing it heating up, getting orange, we're about to blow some flames. So I get a nice video of that in my report. I take a picture showing that each chamber has a flame. And another reason why I carry a carbon monoxide detector. I put a CO detector near a vent upstairs or at my workstation, my drop cloth. That way, if this thing is leaking carbon monoxide through the registers, I'm gonna pick it up. So typically your CO detectors in the house are not gonna pick up low levels, where a professional carbon monoxide detector will pick up 1 part per million. So if we have a carbon monoxide issue, 1, I'm gonna get out of the house or open up all the windows, and 2, I can alert my client and the seller that they've got a dangerous issue in their house. So again, we're burning at this point. Our blower is going to start pushing air through the vents. For a quicker, thorough inspection, I'm going to get my thermal imaging camera started up, and I'm just going to start walking the house, and I'm going to look at the registers. So we're going to find our vents, and I'm just going to make sure that I'm seeing heat coming out of the vents. So as soon as that blower starts really kicking, we'll be able to walk the house. And rather than having to physically go up to every vent and feel for hot air, I can see that we've got hot air in every room. So for now, we'll go to the vent closest to the furnace. And right here, I can just confirm I'm seeing heat coming out of the vents. So I'm going to walk every room in the house and make sure that every room is getting hot air. Your air conditioning system is going to use the same fan to push air around the house. So if I'm getting hot air in every room, I'm likely going to get cold air in every room as well. All right, and on this one, we're going to look also, we're going to give them the condition, make sure it's operating, you're getting heat through the house. That's the basics of what we're looking for. We looked for leaks. We're looking for signs of moisture, corrosion, rust. We're looking for any sediment buildup on the burners themselves, excessively dusty burners. Now I'm going to give my client the age of the appliance. So I'm going to give them the serial number. I'm going to look up the age. So this was manufactured in November 2020. So I'll put that in my report. My client will know the age of the furnace. We've got a fairly new furnace here. It looks clean, looks like it's being serviced properly. And a lot of times, if my client is not going to stay for the entire inspection, a lot of times they'll show up at the beginning and they'll leave. I like to give them some information. Most of my clients are concerned about the roof, foundation, and major appliances. So I'll try to give them information on all of those components and systems before they leave. That way they feel like they walked away with something. All right, we're gonna go ahead and inspect the attic. So picnic blanket, I've used a picnic blanket for 8 years. So the same one, works really well. I put it under the attic space before I get into the attic. That way it catches insulation. I also keep a vacuum in the car, a dry wet vac, battery powered vacuum. That way if I get it on clothing or something in a closet, or it gets out of my blanket, I can vacuum up those messes. All right, always make sure my hands are clean. I wash my hands before I get into the attic. I don't want to leave marks. You expect insulation to fall on your head. Got a very low attic, very little headroom. We're looking at the sheathing. We're looking for stains. I like to take pictures straight down the rafter or truss system. That way I can see if I see any damage, any leaks that are following the rafters. I'm looking at the ventilation. I'm feeling, what does it feel like in the attic space. Does it feel excessively humid? Do I see signs of water damage or mold? I'm also looking right at the end of this attic, we've got bathroom vents. One of them is discharging to the roof vent, and then the other one is discharging straight into the attic. So the reason we don't want our vents discharging in the attic is we don't want to increase humidity levels in the attic space. So I'm going to mention that to my client, having those vents extended to the exterior. I'm going to mention in my report that I'm inspecting the attic from the hatch, inside the attic at the hatch. I'm not inspecting walking the attic, just there's not enough room in here to walk around. But I'm going to mention that they should probably add some more insulation. Looks like they've got about 12 inches. We'd like to see more, especially right here around the vent, around the whole house fan. There's really not enough insulation. Also, we mentioned the whole house fan earlier. This whole house fan here has no cover. So in the wintertime, we want to actually cover the whole house fan. Otherwise, you know, we're really open to the interior and we're going to lose a lot of our interior heat upstairs through the whole house fan. So again, I'm looking at the truss system. Things look okay. Vents look good. A lot of times you'll see leaking around, flashing around the vents, but we're looking pretty good here. The air feels nice. All right, so that completes this inspection. So next up is the report. We just evaluated this house built in 1980. We found defects. That's what we're looking for our client. So we found improper drafting issues. We need a little more attic insulation. Very common things, uneven driveway due to settling. Flower beds next to the house that are allowing water to settle next to the foundation. All these suggestions are going to be in our final product, which is that inspection report. And so we're confident that we did a good, thorough inspection. We gave the client what they asked for. Now it's up to them to take that information, negotiate what they can on this house, and go to the next step in that home buying process. So until next time, I'm Jeremiah Wheelersburg with Craftsman Home Inspections. See you on the next home inspection.